Chapter 809. The millions of martial artists were stunned as they watched the shocking collision of sword moves. Yi Guqin's sword move was so powerful that it exceeded everyone's expectations. They could not imagine how Yi Guqin, who was only at the life and death realm, could perform such a terrifying sword move. What a powerful sword move! What a pity! He's too weak. Lung Qianhen, who was standing high in the sky, held his sword. His cold eyes were filled with surprise. A sword move that could make him, the solitary cloud sword saint, exclaim in admiration was obviously extraordinary. Unfortunately, Yi Guqin's realm was too far away from Di Haotian's. After the violent roar, the world gradually calmed down. Yi Guqin half knelt in a pool of blood. Even his long black hair was soaked in blood and dyed dark red. He held the hilt of the Xianming heavy sword in his hand. The sword body had already shattered. It was hard to imagine that the Xianming heavy sword, which was strong enough to be used as a shield, could not withstand the demon Buddha's tears and shattered. At this moment, Yi Guqin was forcefully supporting his body. The shattered Xianming heavy sword seemed to indicate that Yi Guqin was on the verge of death. In the sky, Di Haotian stood calmly. The golden dragon formed by the innate dragon Emperor Qi raised its head and let out a dragon roar. "This is really surprising," Di Haotian muttered to himself. The Thousand Gods tribulation was a supreme sword skill manifested from the Thunder Calamity sword. Even with Di Haotian's experience, the demon Buddha's tears had surprised him. "If we were in the same realm, your sword move might be able to threaten my protective dragon Emperor Qi." Unfortunately, Di Haotian shook his head slightly. Thus, when everyone saw this scene, they knew that it was over. Yi Guqin's sword move with all his might could not break through Di Haotian's innate dragon Emperor Qi. It could not even break through the protective dragon Emperor Qi, let alone hurt Di Haotian. Not to mention, Di Haotian had 3 gifted superpowers. He had yet to reveal his true strength. He didn't even take out the Emperor's sword in his body. This was a completely unequal battle. "Silly boy," Su Jianshi flashed and hugged the bloodied Yi Guqin. Her tears fell like rain. What was heart-wrenching? What is heart-wrenching pain? Cough. With a violent cough, Yi Guqin's body trembled slightly. Yi Guqin is still alive? The onlookers' eyes almost popped out of their sockets when they saw this scene. Yi Guqin was still alive after such a powerful collision? Many cultivators looked at each other and saw the horror in each other's eyes. Regardless of the result today, just the fact that Yi Guqin could survive 2 of Di Haotian's moves while being in the life and death chamber was enough to make him famous in the South Horizon region. "He's really lucky." Gu Xiaoyang's face darkened slightly. He didn't expect Yi Guqin to still be alive. "There's a kind of willpower supporting him," Yizang Yue said after a moment of silence. "No matter how strong a willpower is, it can't withstand a single blow from strength." Gu Xiaoyang shook his head. Everyone was infected by Yi Guqin's unyielding willpower. "There's still one last move." Yi Guqin stood up with difficulty and said, "Yi Guqin wants to survive the last move?" Many people were astonished when they heard Yi Guqin's words. Yi Guqin's sword had shattered. What could he use to fight Di Haotian? It's probably because of Su Jianshi. He's willing to throw away his life for a beauty. Some people sighed. "No, it's enough. If this continues, you'll die." Su Jianshi hugged Yi Guqin tightly. Her eyes were red from the heart-wrenching pain. "There's only one move left." "Su Jianshi, let go of me." Yi Guqin broke free from Su Jianshi's embrace and left bloody footprints in his wake. He raised his blood-stained face and held the broken Xianming heavy sword in his hand. He pointed it at Di Haotian in the sky. "The last move of the 3-move agreement. Come." Yi Guqin's blood-stained hair fluttered in the wind. He knew that Di Haotian would use all his strength for the last move. He knew that he would die after the last move. But Yi Guqin was still fearless. This was because he had promised Su Jianshi that he would be by her side and shield her from all the storms. For her, not to mention Di Haotian, so what if he could kill a god? This was Yi Guqin's promise to Su Jianshi. He might not be able to kill a god with his current strength, but at least, he could stand in front of Su Jianshi. "Silly boy, you're really silly." "Too silly," Su Jianshir's eyes were hazy with tears as her heart trembled. In the sky, Sword Saint Donglio's projection said, "Hao Qian, don't play anymore. Let's end this." After all, there were millions of cultivators present. Di Haoyan had proposed the three-move agreement in public. If Yi Guchen really survived, then Di Haoyan would be in a difficult position. Was he really not going to take Su Jianshir's emperor's sword? That was impossible. But if that happened, Di Haoyan's reputation of going back on his word would be bad. Di Haoyan was a perfect person and shouldn't have such a blemish. "I know what I'm doing." Di Haoyan nodded. His long golden hair fluttered in the wind, looking like a golden river. A godlike aura emanated from his body. As the aura spread out, all the cultivators present felt a kind of suppression. It wasn't a suppression of cultivation, but a suppression of life as a 10th grade sovereign. Di Haoyan was a perfect person and was born to be superior to others. Everyone's expression changed when they felt this perfect aura. They knew that Di Haoyan was going to use his true strength. Because if Yi Guchen survived this last move, then Di Haoyan would be in a difficult position. Therefore, this move must be Di Haoyan's ultimate move. Di Haoyan is serious. Yi Guchen will definitely die with this move. Gu Xiaoyang said with certainty. Yi Songyue was also silent. She clearly thought so too. At this moment, all the disciples in the Sword Sect's Tower Forest were silent. No matter how much they believed in Yi Guchen, Di Haoyan was too strong. Yi Guchen? Yan Wushuang bit her lip until it bled. She felt sad and sour in her heart. She was sad because of Yi Guchen's situation. She was sour because Yi Guchen was willing to give up everything for Su Jianshir, even his life. As for her, she could only watch silently from behind and feel sad. Yi Guchen, Princess Phoenix Dawn, Kenpo, and the others were also watching at this moment. Duan Tianfeng sighed. He wanted to help, but he was powerless. No one thought that Yi Guchen would be able to survive this attack. My will is the will of heaven. This move tells you that heaven's will cannot be defied. Di Haoyan spoke like the voice of a deity. He slowly tapped his forehead with his finger. A powerful golden sword aura whizzed out and condensed into a golden sword shadow in the void. Heavenly Emperor Sword Art, Heavenly Emperor's Extremity, Heavenly God / Di Haoyan pointed his finger downwards. That terrifying golden sword shadow seemed to be able to cut through the universe and slash towards Yi Guchen. Di Haoyan had used some of the power of the Heavenly Emperor Sword for this move. No one could stop it. Facing this ultimate move, Yi Guchen remained calm. Su Jianshir, this is the last thing I can do for you, and Hongxue, I'm sorry. Yi Guchen held the broken sword in his hand and muttered in his heart. However, just as he was about to use all his strength to block Di Haoyan's attack, a slender and delicate figure once again blocked in front of him. She flew toward Di Haoyan's sword shadow. At the same time, she turned around and smiled brightly. I'm sorry, silly kid. You have to live on. Forget about me. Chapter 8:10. Yi Guchen's thoughts stopped at that moment. His eyes froze. This scene was so familiar. Boundless golden light radiated from her body, which was so slender that it made one's heart ache. At the same time, a shout resounded in all directions. Human Emperor Chapter, All Life Orders. An ancient golden sword appeared from Su Jianshir's body. Powerful and surging sword chi swept across the sky and earth. A golden emperor figure appeared in the void. Yi Guchen's thoughts seemed to have stopped. All that was left in his eyes was Su Jianshir's tearful smile. But this time, Su Jianshir didn't say anything to make Yi Guchen remember her. Instead, forget her. Su Jianshir was afraid that Yi Guchen would seek revenge from Di Haoyan. She didn't want Yi Guchen to be hurt because of her. So, she would rather have Yi Guchen forget her and live peacefully for the rest of his life. What kind of unforgettable love could make a young girl say something like, "Forget me," to a young man she adored? Su Jianshir. Yi Guchen found it difficult to calm down. A burst of vigorous aura spread out with a loud rumble. This time, it was Su Jianshir who stood in front of him with her life. Boom! Terrifying shockwaves spread out like ripples. Su Jianshi had completely released the power of the human emperor sword and used the ultimate technique, all life orders. Countless figures clashed with Di Haoyan's heavenly Empyrean sword art as the sword slashed out. Terrifying golden sword qi wreaked havoc in all directions. Everyone was shocked by this scene. At the last moment, Su Jianshi still made a move. Human Emperor Sword. Di Haoyan's silver eyes shot out an unprecedented light. Suppress. In the sky, Sword Saint Donglio's projection also reached out a hand. The human Emperor Sword was something the Heavenly God Sword sect had to obtain. Although Elder Xinggu and the others were envious, they couldn't do anything with Sword Saint Donglu around. Is that the human Emperor Sword? 1/3 of the 3 Emperor Saint swords. As Su Jianshi took out the human Emperor Sword, everyone's eyes focused on the ancient golden sword. Su Jianshi was heavily injured by Di Haoyan's attack. Coupled with the fact that she had fully activated the Emperor's sword, the terrifying backlash made Su Jianshi cough up blood. Her face was pale, and her snow-white skin was torn apart. Blood splattered everywhere. No, Yiguchen wanted to help, but his body trembled and he spat out another mouthful of blood. His body was already at the end of its flight. Su Jianshi looked back at Yiguchen with deep emotions. Although his physical body had collapsed, the corners of his blood-stained lips curled into the most brilliant smile in the world. Silly lad, to have met you, I have no regrets in my life. Next, the mortal Emperor Sword vibrated and released a dazzling light that engulfed Su Jianshi's body and sealed her within. The Golden Emperor's silhouette also returned to the ancient golden sword. Under countless shocked gazes, golden light gathered on the surface of the mortal sovereign sword, condensing into golden crystal-like solids, sealing the entire mortal sovereign sword within. Di Haoyan reached out and snatched the mortal sovereign sword that was wrapped in the golden crystal. Finally, got it? Di Haoyan's indifferent face revealed a rare look of joy. Di Haoyan had always wanted the mortal sovereign sword, and now, his wish was finally fulfilled. Di Haoyan frowned slightly. He had indeed obtained the mortal sovereign sword, but the mortal sovereign sword that was wrapped in the golden crystal had fallen silent. Di Haoyan raised his hand and released sword qi. It landed on the golden crystal, but it couldn't leave a single mark. This is the mortal sovereign sword sealing itself? Di Haoyan frowned. Some of the primordial swords with spirits could choose their own masters. If an unsuitable master forcefully suppressed it, the sword itself would seal itself. It wouldn't be able to use any power, as if it was in a deep slumber. It was clear that the Golden Emperor silhouette was the mortal sovereign sword spirit. However, the mortal sovereign sword spirit wasn't willing to be controlled by Di Haoyan. That was why it had swallowed Su Jianshi's body and sealed itself. Do you dare to defy the will of the heavens? Di Haoyan released the power of the heavenly emperor sword from his forehead and attacked the golden crystal. But it still couldn't break it. Di Haoyan's face was frozen. Not only Di Haoyan, but everyone else also didn't expect this to happen. The mortal sovereign sword automatically wrapped around Su Jianshi and sealed her along with the sword. In other words, even if Di Haoyan obtained the mortal sovereign sword, he wouldn't be able to refine it. This is interesting. Di Haoyan obtained the mortal sovereign sword with great difficulty, but he can't use it. Some people were secretly gloating. After all, Di Haoyan was already very strong. If he could refine the mortal sovereign sword, he would be invincible among the younger generation. Even Gu Xiaoyang hated Yiguchen, but he didn't want Di Haoyan to refine the mortal sovereign sword. Haoyan, don't worry. With the power of the heavenly emperor sword, the myriad sword king sword formation, the immortal fire, and the refinement of the primordial swords, the seal of the mortal sovereign sword will be broken in 3 years. At that time, you can refine both the sword and the person. Sword Saint Donglu suddenly said in the sky. The moment these words were spoken, everyone was shocked. They didn't expect the Heavenly God Sword sect to have such means. That's right. I was too impatient. It's just 2 or 3 years. Can't I wait? Di Haoyan regained his composure. Give it back. A hoarse voice could be heard all of a sudden. Although the voice wasn't loud, it seemed to resound in everyone's ears. Di Haotian lowered his head slightly and looked down at Yiguchen, who was covered in blood. Yiguchen lowered his head slightly, his black hair covering his eyes. He didn't move, but his hoarse voice was incomparably cold and eerie. I said, "Give her back." A demonic aura gradually rose from the surface of Yiguchen's body. The sky changed color and a fierce wind whistled. Everyone could feel a terrifying murderous intent emanating from Yiguchen. It was as if the murderous intent was about to destroy the heavens. The clouds in the sky seemed to be dyed red by the murderous intent. Yiguchen slowly raised his head. His eyes were as red as blood. "Di Haotian, I'll give you one last chance." "Give her tvik." Yiguchen's hand holding the sword trembled, and then there was a cracking sound. The sword hilt was crushed by Yiguchen. "Is this the anger of a mortal?" Di Haotian calmly put away the self-sealed Renhuang sword as he felt the killing intent that could engulf everything in its path. "If that's the case, then let's be buried together." Yiguchen slowly took out a blood-red elixir. When they saw the blood-red elixir, the pupils of the millions of warriors suddenly shrank at the same time. "That's the 9-death elixir." A knowledgeable martial artist suddenly let out an earth-shattering shriek. This 9-death elixir was the elixir that Yiguchen had found in the origin ring left behind by the Dragon Abyss village chief. The 9-death elixir was a saint-grade elixir, and it only had one effect. At the cost of one's life, one would burn one's remaining strength and burst out with an unprecedented peak cultivation. When they saw Yiguchen take out the elixir, everyone was dumbfounded. "No, Yiguchen!" Yen Wushuang let out a shrill scream. After taking the 9-death elixir, there was no way to survive. "Su Jianshi, for you, I'll die 9 times without regrets." Yiguchen murmured. Without hesitation, he swallowed the 9-death elixir. The moment he swallowed it, the world seemed to have gone silent. Everyone held their breaths, and time seemed to have frozen. Then, a terrifying aura that seemed to want to bury the universe erupted from Yiguchen's body. Chapter 8:11. The wind and clouds rose, the mountains and rivers moved, and killing intent soared. The galaxy split, the firmament shattered, and a life-risking attack buried gods and demons. Yiguchen let out a long roar. It was as if his roar was going to shatter the mountains and rivers. The violent killing intent was like a volcano erupting. The terrifying aura was like a surging ocean. Yiguchen swallowed the 9 deaths no regrets pill and used his own life as the foundation to erupt with shocking waves. Terrifying sword intent swept out from Yiguchen's body, causing the heavens and earth to shake. This scene was very similar to Feng Manlu's life-risking move, Unique Sky Sword. A layer of blood-red flames burned on the surface of Yiguchen's body. He was like a demon god in fire. His flesh, blood, true qi, and soul were all burning. The price he paid was an unprecedented power. Yiguchen's aura rose steadily. He directly broke through the heaven and earth spiritual bridge, and then the first layer of the divine dwelling. The second layer of the divine dwelling. The third layer of the divine dwelling. The fourth layer of the divine dwelling. Finally, under everyone's shocked gazes, Yiguchen's aura stopped at the 5th layer of the divine dwelling. From the life and death chamber to the 5th layer of the divine dwelling. Everyone's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. Madness. Extreme madness. The eyes of the millions of cultivators were bloodshot. They had gone crazy. This was the first time they had seen someone so reckless. He swallowed the 9 deaths no regrets pill and used his own life as the price to kill Di Haotian. This killing intent was enough to bury the heavens and destroy the earth, shocking everyone. "No, don't." Yen Wushuang was already sobbing. The stronger Yiguchen was, the more his life would be squandered away. No matter what, Yiguchen would not be able to survive. Consuming the 9 deaths no regrets pill meant certain death. This was the consensus of all cultivators. "Senior Brother Yi." All the disciples of the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest roared crazily, tears flowing from their eyes. "Brother Yi." Kenpo was moved, his body trembling. "Yiguchen." Princess Fengshi sighed. She did not know why, but she felt very uncomfortable in her heart. "You brat," sighed. Duan Tianfeng let out a long sigh and clenched his fists tightly. What a powerful sword concept! Leng Qianhen exclaimed. That little bastard is finally dead. Xing Yamo and the other false saints all had cold smiles on their faces. Although Yi Guchen wasn't dead yet, taking the 9 deaths without regrets pill was no different from being dead. It was only a matter of time. After he dies, I will retrieve the innate sword embryo from his body, Gu Xiaoyang murmured. Sigh. Yi Songyu sighed and didn't say anything. The 1 million cultivators present all had different reactions. However, most of the martial artists still looked at Yi Guchen with respect. Not everyone would have the courage to take the 9 deaths without regrets pill. You still want to resist? Pitiful ant. In the face of Yi Guchen, who was willing to risk his life, Di Haotian's expression remained indifferent. From his point of view, Yi Guchen's action was extremely stupid and was cutting off his own path of survival. No one can defy the heavens because I, Di Haotian, am the heavens. No one can take away what I have. A golden longsword appeared between Di Haotian's eyebrows. This golden longsword was very similar to the human emperor's sword. However, compared to the human emperor's sword, this longsword seemed to have the aura of the heavens. There was an endless river of stars wrapped around the sword as if it was the 9 heavens. That's the heavenly emperor's sword. Di Haotian has taken out the heavenly emperor's sword. Everyone was shocked. No one had expected Di Haotian to use the heavenly emperor's sword. Heavenly emperor's sword art, heavenly unification, heavenly glory. Di Haotian slashed down with the heavenly emperor's sword. The dazzling sword radiance was like the light of the heavens as it emitted endless divine radiance. Thousands of terrifying golden rays of light gathered on the heavenly emperor's sword. When the sword slashed down, it was as if the heavens were passing judgment on the life and death of the ants. Feeling the terrifying power of the sword, everyone took a deep breath. No one in the divine dwelling stage would be able to withstand this attack. In other words, Di Haotian's heavenly unification was enough to kill any divine dwelling stage expert. Even an expert at the peak of the 9th heaven of the divine dwelling stage would have to die under this sword. It's over. Looks like Yi Guchen's efforts are useless. Even if he consumed the 9 deaths no regrets pill and fought with his life, he can't hurt Di Haotian. Yes, even the sword is broken. How can Yi Guchen fight with Di Haotian? Seeing Di Haotian's terrifying sword, everyone shook their heads. In the end, Yi Guchen's all-out strike was no match for Di Haotian's sword. However, in the face of this sword, Yi Guchen wasn't afraid at all. The words that Feng Manlu said when he used the heavenly sword echoed in his mind. In this world, there is nothing that the sword can't cut through. The brave are fearless, and the sword is invincible. An unparalleled sword will exuded from Yi Guchen's body. In the face of Di Haotian's sword, Yi Guchen wasn't afraid at all. There was only monstrous killing intent and the belief to save Su Jianshi. At this moment, the world trembled and the heavens shook. All of Yi Guchen's means exploded. The Azura sword Dao exploded. The 5 elements sword intent exploded. The edgeless sword intent exploded. Man and sword as one exploded. The extreme Qi Si exploded to the limit. The chaotic knowledge Si crazily rotated. The ancient god heart violently beat. The terrifying will that sword from Yi Guchen's body shook the world. The 9th sword sect sequence insignia on the back of his hand also emitted a blazing light. The blood in his body also boiled, and 360 golden sword veins vaguely appeared. Rumble! High in the sky, the ancient sword that had been hanging since ancient times, the heavenly emperor, suddenly trembled a little. It was only a little. However, boundless sword chi burst out from the celestial the arch sword. This scene caused everyone's eyeballs to pop out. What did they see? Boundless sword chi shot down from the celestial the arch sword like rain. What's going on? Are my eyes playing tricks on me? The heavenly emperor's sword actually trembled? Heavens, did Yi Guchen's attack resonate with the heavenly emperor's sword? That's the heavenly emperor's sword. It's like the sun and the moon, shining over the south horizon region. How can it burst out a wisp of sword energy? At this moment, all the martial artists were so shocked that they didn't know what to do. Even Xing Mo, Elder Xinggu, and Dongfang, the three false saints, were shocked. How is this possible? Sword Saint Donglu also let out a cry of surprise. This kid. Duan Tianfeng was also stunned. Solitary Cloud Sword Saint Leng Qianhen's eyes were fixed on Yiguchen. This sword cultivator who was just at the life and death threshold actually resonated with the Heavenly Emperor sword. Everyone was shocked. Everyone went crazy. At this moment, everyone's eyes were focused on Yiguchen. Yiguchen used his fingers as a sword and pointed at the sky. My sword sect Yiguchen, today, I will sacrifice my life. With my blood as a guide, with my body as a sacrifice, I will borrow the sword from the heavens. Yiguchen roared, and his roar shook the mountains and rivers for millions of miles. Borrowing the Heavenly Emperor sword from the 9 heavens. The Heavenly Emperor sword shook the entire South Horizon region. Chapter 8:12. Everyone went crazy, as if all the blood in their bodies was about to burn out. That was the Celestial Emperor. The ultimate weapon ranked 14th on the Immemorial Sword Record's Heaven ranking. The Heaven ranking sword could not be forged by humans. Even the Ancient Sword Emperor and the Immemorial Divine Craftsman could only create and nurture the Earth ranking sword. The Heaven ranking sword used heaven and earth as a furnace, all things as copper, yin and yang as charcoal, and creation as the work. Don't look at how the Celestial Emperor sword was only ranked 14th. But one had to know that in the universe, there were only 36 Heaven ranking swords. At this level, the ranking did not have much meaning. The gap between them was not particularly big. Even the 14th ranked Celestial Emperor would not have much of a difference with the top 10 Heaven ranking swords. In the hearts of all the martial artists in the South Horizon region, the Celestial Emperor was an unshakable existence. Countless peerless experts had tried to seize the Celestial Emperor sword, but none of them succeeded. The Celestial Emperor sword was like the blazing sun and bright moon, illuminating the South Horizon region. It had already become the source of all living things, an existence like faith. And today, now, at this moment, this Celestial Emperor sword that hung in the sky of the South Horizon region, unmoving since ancient times. For the first time, it was shaken. It was indescribable, like the sun being destroyed and the stars sinking. Although with Yiguchen's current strength, even if he burned himself and sacrificed his life, he could only borrow a trace of the Celestial Emperor sword's power. But just this trace of power seemed to be able to crush eternity. Endless sword energy burst out from the Celestial Emperor sword and fell down, under the shocked gazes of the crowd. The countless sword energy condensed into a sword of light that was tens of thousands of feet long. The sword of light seemed to be formed from the heavens and earth. It shot down explosively, destroying the clouds in the sky and stirring up the wind and clouds in the 9 heavens. Looking down on the world and shaking the mortal world, 10,000 miles of heavenly sword in the sky. Yiguchen roared towards the sky, using his finger as a sword, he pointed straight at Di Haoyan. The 10,000 miles of heavenly sword cut through the wind and clouds, sweeping away all enemies in the world with one sword. Di Haoyan's indifferent expression changed for the first time. He never thought that Yiguchen could trigger the resonance of the Celestial Emperor sword. He also did not expect that the Celestial Emperor sword that hung in the sky of the South Horizon region would be inspired by Yiguchen and turn into a sword of light. Di Haoyan held the Emperor sword in his hand and changed his sword's stance, sweeping upwards. The golden sword light illuminated the sky as the Imperial Heaven returning sword collided with the sword light. However, Di Haoyan's attack was as weak as paper in front of the sword of light. Everyone who saw this scene was dumbfounded. Even the false saints and sword Saint Donglu were shocked to see this. Yiguchen had only borrowed a sliver of the Celestial the Arch sword's power, and it was already so terrifying. The ultimate move that Di Haoyan unleashed with the Heavenly Emperor sword was actually unable to block it at all. How is this possible? How can the Celestial the Arch sword be used by you? No one understands the heavens better than me. Di Haoyan's expression changed. His golden hair danced in the wind like a golden river. An unprecedented divine light burst forth from his silver eyes, as if he wanted to pierce through the heavens and earth. He didn't believe it. He was the true dragon of clear sky, the mandate of heaven. How could he be defeated by this sword? The heavenly emperor has appeared. Di Haotian's voice gushed out, completely activating the power of the heavenly emperor sword. Endless golden sword radiance shot up into the sky, illuminating the entire universe. Outside the heavenly emperor sword, a 1,000-foot-long golden shadow appeared, standing tall in the darkness. Di Haotian, on the other hand, was in the middle of the golden shadow. He was like a dragon among men, with an aura of supremacy. That's the heavenly emperor's shadow. Everyone's eyes trembled. Even Sword Saint Donglu looked shocked. Di Haotian had dominated the younger generation of the Nantian region, and almost no one could make him use the heavenly emperor's shadow. However, at this moment, in order to resist Yi Guchen's move that sacrificed his life, Di Haotian had activated the heavenly emperor's shadow. Slash! Di Haotian's golden true chi surged as he raised the heavenly emperor's sword in his hand. The heavenly emperor's shadow also raised the golden sacred sword at the same time. Following Di Haotian's movement, the sword slashed toward the sword of light. Heavenly Emperor Sword Art. Heavenly Supreme. Punishment of Heaven. The Heavenly Emperor Sword Art was the ultimate sword move hidden in the Heavenly Emperor Sword, just like the Human Sovereign chapter in the Human Sovereign Sword. As for the Heavenly Supreme, it was the trump card of the Heavenly Emperor Sword Art. When the sword slashed out, it was as if the Heavenly Emperor was punishing all living beings. The vibrations were 10 times stronger than the Heavenly Supreme unification from before. The Heavenly Emperor slashed at the Sword of Light. There was a loud explosion, the sky shook, and the spiritual chi was in a mess. The collision of true chi was like a huge wave that swept across the sky and the ground. Before everyone's shocked eyes, the golden sword radiance collided with the Sword of Light. They fought and destroyed each other. Then, Kacha. The Sword of Light broke through Di Haotian's ultimate sword move again and slashed down. However, that horrifying shockwave was greatly weakened by the Emperor Heaven Supreme's move. After all, with Yi Guchen's current strength, even if he sacrificed his life, he could only borrow a little of the Heavenly Emperor Sword's power. Even so, the sword aura of the weakened giant sword was still powerful. It pierced toward Di Haotian with an aura that could destroy everything. Innate Dragon Emperor's Chi. Di Haotian's face changed. He had not expected that the Heavenly Emperor's emergence and the Heavenly Supreme would still be unable to resist the terrifying sword. On the surface of Di Haotian's body, the protective Dragon Emperor's Chi appeared again. The Golden Dragon Emperor's Chi condensed into the shadow of a coiling dragon, and it roared at the Sword of Light. Boom! The powerful vibrations of the collision burst out again. Everyone's eyes were pierced by the radiance, and they closed their eyes as tears flowed down. The blinding radiance flickered violently, and it gradually dimmed after more than 10 breaths. The millions of martial artists immediately looked over. Even Sword Saint Donglu, Elder Ancient Star, and the others were looking over. Gu Xiaoyang Sangyue and the others also stared at the dust cloud. A wind blew, blowing away the dust cloud. Di Haotian's figure was revealed in front of everyone. However, everyone's breathing almost stopped at the same time. Sword Saint Donglu was also extremely surprised. At this moment, Di Haotian, who was standing in the sky, was coughing up blood non-stop. His white robe was stained with blood, and a huge bloody hole appeared in his chest. Although it avoided the heart, the bloody hole had almost pierced through Di Haotian's body. Everyone could see the faint golden organs in his body. The Golden Dragon Emperor's chi shadow could no longer maintain its dragon form, and it collapsed into a cloud of golden mist. Yi Guchen had used his life as the price to borrow the sword from the heavens to break Di Haotian's innate Dragon Emperor's chi and severely injure him. How is this possible? Di Haotian's protective Dragon Emperor's chi has been broken. He's been severely injured. Yi Guchen has seriously injured Di Haotian. After a short moment of shock, an earth-shattering uproar broke out. Di Haotian's miserable scene shocked everyone. Their eyes widened, and their scalps went numb. Chapter 8:13. What kind of existence was Di Haoyan? The supreme son of the heavenly god sword sect. Young Master Haoyan, one of the top 10 young masters. A 10th grade supreme genius with 3 special abilities. An elite of the sword faction. It was even rumored that he had the bloodline of one of the 100 races. Each of his identities could scare a group of people to death. But now, under everyone's gaze, they witnessed it with their own eyes. This supreme genius, whose name resounded throughout the South Sky region, Haotian Dragon, was severely injured by a low-level dynasty's life and death threshold genius. Who would believe this? Oh my god, what kind of existence is Yi Guqin? Heaven-defying, absolutely heaven-defying. He severely injured Di Haoyan at the life and death threshold. The South Sky region will definitely be turned upside down, and all the geniuses will go crazy. Di Haoyan, whom they look up to, was actually severely injured by a nobody, Yi Guqin. All the martial artists went crazy, and they couldn't wait to spread the news of what they saw today. This was incomparably explosive news, and no one would believe it. But in fact, even the million martial artists who witnessed it with their own eyes felt that it was unreal. It was too fake, like a dream. Injured? Di Haoyan wiped the corner of his mouth with his hand and looked at the blood that was suffused with golden light, as if he didn't believe it. How long had it been since he was injured? He had forgotten what pain felt like. But now, a heart-wrenching pain came from his empty chest. Di Haoyan had yet to recover from his shock. In the entire South Sky region, there were very few people of the same generation who could compete with him. Most of the geniuses who fought with him couldn't even break through his protective dragon Emperor Qi. Therefore, Di Haoyan had not tasted injury for a long time. Not to mention such a serious injury. Yi Guqin, you injured me? Di Haoyan finally recovered from his shock. His usually indifferent expression suddenly surged with a murderous intent that could change the color of heaven and earth. Who was he? He was destined to be the Haotian true dragon. Injuring him was going against heaven's will, against heaven's will. I still can't kill you? Yi Guqin's broken body stood on the ground with a cold smile on his face. He still couldn't save Su Jianshi. Di Haoyan was too strong. Even at the cost of his life, he could only severely injure Di Haoyan but could not kill him. Di Haoyan had too many trump cards. In fact, if Di Haoyan had not been so conceited and arrogant, Yi Guqin could have hurt him, but it would not have been so serious. In the end, it was because Di Haoyan had viewed Yi Guqin as an ant and underestimated him that he suffered such a heavy blow. Haotian, are you all right? Asked Sword Saint Donglu, looking at Di Haoyan. Di Haoyan was the core prodigy of the heavenly god sword sect. If there were no accidents in the future, he would become the next sect master of the heavenly god sword sect. If something were to happen to Di Haoyan, it would be an irreparable loss. It's fine. Di Haoyan's eyes were cold. The surrounding martial artists were in an uproar. The news of Yi Guqin borrowing the sword from the heavens and severely injuring Di Haoyan would definitely spread throughout the entire South Sky region. Since ancient times, there were very few people who could cause the celestial arch sword to move. Yi Guqin is really shocking. Even Yi Tangyue, who had a cold personality, could not help but have a strange look in her eyes. Among the younger generation of the South Sky region, no one could injure Di Haoyan like that. Yi Guqin was the only one. What's there to talk about when he's already dead? Gu Xiaoyang's eyes twitched when he saw Yi Tsangyue's expression. It's a pity. Yi Tsangyue shook her head. After consuming the 9 deaths no regrets elixir, there was no way anyone could survive. While the rest of the spectators were shocked, they also thought of the same point and shook their heads with a sigh. If Yi Guqin did not die, he might be able to fight against Di Haoyan in the future. Is it really over? Princess Feng, she was disappointed and frustrated, feeling a sense of loss. Sigh, the heavens are jealous of geniuses. Kenpo let out a long sigh. Although Yi Guqin was going to die, his last move, borrowing the sword from the heavens, was enough to leave his name in history and be passed down in the South Sky region. Yi Guqin? Yan Wushuang covered her face with her hands as she cried silently. The eyes of Ji Ling, Chu Qingqi, Yi Xie and the other disciples of the sword sect also turned red. The eldest senior brother in their hearts, the dignified sword master of his generation, had finally perished. Cough. Yiguchen could not hold on any longer and knelt on the ground on one knee. He felt a life-devouring power spread out from his body. It was the power of the 9 Deaths No Regrets elixir. This life-devouring power spread throughout Yiguchen's body. It would devour all of his true qi, flesh, blood, and even soul power. This was the price Yiguchen had to pay for using his peak cultivation, his life. This life-devouring power could not be stopped. No pills or sacred herbs could make up for it. This power would not stop until Yiguchen's life was completely devoured. This was the reason why the 9 Deaths No Regrets elixir would kill anyone who consumed it. Yiguchen can't hold on any longer. After all, consuming the 9 Deaths No Regrets elixir should be his limit. Seeing the exhausted Yiguchen coughing up blood, all the cultivators were filled with emotion. Although you'll definitely die, offending me is the same as offending the heavens. I'll bestow upon you heavenly punishment. Di Haotian raised his hand again. The Emperor's sword let out an earth-shaking cry as if it felt its master's anger. Although Di Haotian was not in a good state, he still had the ability to attack. Yiguchen did not have any strength to resist. Even if Di Haotian did not attack, Yiguchen would die. Just as Di Haotian's sword was about to fall. The demon fetus, which had been floating in the sky, suddenly trembled violently. Perhaps it was because Yiguchen had activated the power of the Celestial Emperor sword. The demon fetus in the center of the demon fetus finally reacted after being stimulated by the power of the Celestial Emperor sword. Billowing demon chi burst out from the demon fetus. Everyone's eyes turned to look at the devil egg. Sword Saint Donglu, Elder Ancient Star, and the other false saints also turned their attention to the demon fetus. They came here to explore the existence of the primordial famed sword. Yiguchen was just an ant that jumped out halfway, and he would definitely die now. Therefore, these big shots no longer paid attention to Yiguchen. Di Haotian's hand also paused slightly. This was because he felt that the Emperor sword was emitting waves of fear. What is inside? Di Haotian's silver pupils moved as if he wanted to see through the demon fetus. Suddenly, the demon fetus burst out with shocking demon chi. An arrogant roar shook the heavens and the earth. The eternal demon, the heaven-defying master, the incarnation of calamity, slaughtering all living things. Who is it? Everyone, including the false saints and saints like Wendonglu, were shocked by the arrogant tone of his words. They felt an extremely terrifying soul pressure burst out from the demon fetus. In the midst of a thunderous roar, the ground shook and roared. The demon fetus shattered. Monstrous demon chi surged out, surging to the heavens and the earth. A pitch-black demon sword appeared out of nowhere. The pitch-black sword light swept across, swallowing everything in the world. The demon chi surged, sweeping up the dust and surging into the sky. The light cast by the Celestial Emperor's sword dimmed a lot, as if covered with a layer of dust. The demon's sword crossed the sky. The Celestial Emperor covered the dust. The primordial demon's sword finally appeared. Chapter 8:14. The martial artists present were still immersed in the shock of Yiguchen borrowing a sword from the heavens just now. But no one would have thought that the devil egg that had been brewing all along would actually break out of the cocoon at this moment. And what rushed out of that devil egg was shockingly an immemorial devil sword. That devil sword was pitch black all over. It was not the ordinary kind of black, but the kind of ink black that seemed to swallow all light. The devil sword's shape was slightly sinister with spikes, carrying a kind of savage aura. The sword body spread with endless devil patterns, and even carved with bright red blood grooves. The most peculiar thing was the sword guard's handguard, shaped like an open beast's mouth. Inside was actually a cluster of pitch-black vortices, like a black hole, swallowing all things. The moment this devil sword came into being, it stirred up endless winds and clouds. Fiendish energy surged into the firmament, as if wanting to contend with the Celestial Emperor. Immemorial famed swords, the power was vast. If two famed swords collided together, they would instinctively contend with each other. That's the immemorial Devil's Sword. At this moment, even the indifferent sword Saint Donglu could no longer maintain his calm. That was an immemorial famed sword, an existence that even transcending saints would be envious when seeing it. That's right, it's the immemorial famed sword records Earth leaderboard ranked 34th, Devil's Sword God Devouring. Elder Xinggu's expression was agitated, simply about to roar. How long had it been since the South Horizon region had an immemorial famed sword appeared? There was no need to talk about the Heaven Leaderboard's famed swords. Forget about the South Horizon region, even looking at the 9 regions, Heaven Leaderboard's famed swords were also extremely rare. Even some Overlord-class forces in the South Horizon region only possessed Earth Leaderboard famed swords. And now, in front of their eyes, an Earth Leaderboard famed sword appeared alive. Who would not be agitated? That's an immemorial famed sword? Heavens, I can actually see an immemorial famed sword in my lifetime. The surrounding million martial artists also virtually went crazy. Heaven Leaderboard 36, Earth Leaderboard 72, a total of 108 immemorial famed swords, shaking heaven and earth, passed down from ancient times. All the martial artists did not expect that they could see an immemorial famed sword with their own eyes in this lifetime. Devil's Sword God Devouring, recorded in the immemorial famed Masters Records Earth Leaderboard, was an immemorial divine craftsman, six-fingered devil, Gui Wuchang, a devil sword forged from an entire immemorial Taotai fierce beast, possessing the horrifying power to swallow heaven and earth. Everyone's eyes turned red. Especially the big shots from the Overlord forces, their eyes were bloodshot from staring at the scene before them. As expected, is it that devil sword? On the ground, Yiguchen, who only had a wisp of his aura left, looked at the demon sword devouring god and muttered in his heart. This demonic sword was indeed the same one he had seen in the memories of the heaven-devouring beast's beast core, creating an ancient famed sword and imparting the heaven-devouring secret technique. As for the blurry figure in his memories, he killed the Taotai and forged the demon sword. Most likely, he was none other than the six-fingered demon craftsman, Gui Wuchang. Just like the 9 heavens god Casting and Shenyuan Juding, who forged the 3 emperors' sacred sword, they were both divine craftsmen from the immemorial era. What a pity! Yiguchen knelt on one knee. He was not far from death. To be able to see an ancient famed sword before he died, it could be considered as fulfilling one of his wishes. Even if it was only the immemorial demon sword ranked 34th on the Earth ranking, the power of the god-devouring sword was incomparably vast. The terrifying pitch-black sword Qi soared into the sky, its aura shocking. At this moment, Elder Xinggu and the others could not wait any longer. Didn't they come here to search for the traces of the ancient famed sword? Now that the ancient famed sword was right in front of them, how could they not fight for it? When Donglio's illusory figure snorted coldly and stretched out his hand to grab the god-devouring sword. However, at this moment, beside the god-devouring demon sword, demonic Qi rumbled and a skinny old man in a black robe suddenly appeared. His eyes were as deep and dark as a black hole, exuding a bone-chilling evil aura. Hee. How dare you snatch my sword? How dare you? This old man was the one that Yiguchen and the others had seen in the ancient demon city. He was the one who claimed to be the sword spirit of the ancient famed sword. However, how could Yiguchen not know that this old man was not the sword spirit of the ancient famed sword? There was an 80% chance that he was the existence that was sealed in the ancient demon city. You are. Although Elder Xinggu and the others could not recognize the black-eyed old man's identity, they still felt their scalps go numb in the face of this old man with the strength of a false saint. It was hard to imagine that this black-eyed old man, who had been sealed in the ancient demon city for such a long time, still had the strength that even false saints were afraid of. This showed how strong his original strength was. On the other hand, when Donglu, a martial saint expert, froze when he saw the black-eyed old man. After pondering for a moment, he suddenly lost his voice and said, "Could you be the one from the dark world?" I didn't expect that after so long, there would still be people who remember me. I'm the Demon Sword Emperor, Jidin. The black-eyed old man let out a long roar, and an incomparably vigorous soul energy surged out. Although he was still in the primordial spirit state, the energy wave spread out in all directions, shocking everyone. What? He's the Demon Sword Emperor, Jidin? The supreme demon Dao expert who once dominated the dark world? Elder Xinggu, Xingyamo, and Dongfang Ayong, the three false saints, were extremely shocked. They didn't expect that the skinny black-eyed old man in front of them was Jidin. The Demon Sword Emperor, Jidin, was one of the top experts in the dark world. He had once caused a boundless massacre in the Nantian region. Even the heavenly tribulation saints of the overlord forces couldn't stop him, and they were even killed. However, in the end, Jidin mysteriously disappeared. However, they didn't expect him to be sealed in this place. I didn't expect so many people to gather here. Today, I'll let these millions of people help me reconstruct my physical body. Jitian smiled eerily, and the God Devourer sword beside him vibrated, and endless devouring demonic chi burst out in all directions. It turned into thousands of pitch-black sword rays, and they rushed in all directions, toward all the martial artists. Puchi. When those pitch-black sword rays touched those martial artists, regardless of their cultivation level, they instantly exploded into a cloud of blood mist. The blood mist gathered in the fleshly demon fetus. Retreat, retreat quickly. The millions of martial artists felt their hair stand on end, and they hurriedly retreated. However, countless people still died in an instant. Let's retreat. Yen Chang'e led Ta Lin and the others to retreat. A shrill cry was heard. It was Zi Donglai from the Ziyao dynasty. He was hit by a pitch-black sword ray, and his body instantly exploded into a cloud of blood mist. At the same time, the innate purple chi in his body was also taken away. I told you that if you go against the bet, you will suffer retribution. On the other side, Kenpo saw that Zi Donglai had died, and his lips curled into a cold smile. However, he didn't dare to stay any longer. In just an instant, more than 300,000 of the millions of martial artists in the Tianhuang Plain had died. This was the might of the Demon Sword Emperor, Jidin, who was once the #1 demon of all time. And you guys, your flesh and blood is far superior to those martial artists. Jitian turned to Elder Xinggu and the others, and he reached out his hand to grab them. His terrifying soul power turned into a boundless giant hand. Retreat! Elder Xinggu and the others were scared out of their wits, and they hurriedly retreated. However, Xingyamo was caught by the giant soul hand. No! Xingyamo let out a furious roar, and he unleashed all of his strength as a false sage. However, Vihuchi, in front of Jitian, he still couldn't resist. Even though Jitian was only a primordial spirit now, he still killed a false sage casually. An even more vigorous essence surged into the flesh devil fetus. The flesh devil fetus that was as large as an island also began to wriggle violently, shrinking slowly. However, the smaller it became, the more vigorous the power of the flesh devil fetus was. And you guys? Jitian reached out his hand again, and he grabbed at Elder Xinggu and the others. Damn it! Elder Xinggu was so frightened that his face turned pale. Even a false sage like him would have such a feeling, as if he was an ant that could be easily crushed by others. However, at this moment, in the void, there was a burst of brilliance, and a powerful fluctuation appeared again. A river of stars appeared in the sky, accompanied by the arrival of a projection. Demon Sword Emperor, Ilian, if you were in your peak state, no one would dare to provoke you. However, you are only a primordial spirit, and you dare to be so fierce. Aren't you too presumptuous? A figure wrapped in endless starlight stepped out of the void. It's the 7th Star Lord. Elder Xinggu revealed a surprised expression. Chapter 8:15. What? The 7th Astral Lord. The 7th Astral Lord is here too? He's a saint of the Starry Sword Pavilion. The cultivators who had fled far away looked at the demonic Sword Emperor, Jitian, with fear lingering in their hearts. Killing over 300,000 cultivators with a wave of his hand. How terrifying was his strength! However, with the arrival of the seventh astral lord, these cultivators calmed down a little. The seventh astral lord was also a famous saint of the Starry Sword Pavilion. However, that wasn't all. On the other side of the sky, another projection appeared, wrapped in endless divine light. It really is the immemorial demonic sword. Hearing this voice, the patriarch of the Dongfang family's side branch, Dongfang Aoyang's expression froze. It's you, Dongfang Haoyu. Dongfang Haoyu, a saint of the Dongfang family's main branch. Another saint's projection has arrived. Oh my god! Everyone was shocked by this, including Wen Donglu from the Heavenly God Sword sect. All three overlord forces had saints' projections appear. You're just a projection. What can you do to me? The demonic sword emperor, Jitian, didn't have the slightest fear in his black hole-like eyes. To others, a saint of the heavenly tribulation was high and mighty. However, in Jitian's eyes, he was just SOSO. If he was at his peak, he wouldn't even care about the seventh astral lord, Dongfang Haoyu, and the others. Jitian, you've been sealed for so long and your physical body has been destroyed. How dare you be so fierce with just your Yuan spirit? Dongfang Haoyu's tone was cold. Everyone, I don't think now is the time for internal strife. Let's kill Jitian first and then discuss who the God Devourer sword belongs to. What do you think? The seventh astral lord said. Sure. Dongfang Haoyu and Sword Saint Donglu nodded. As saints, their temperament had long passed the point of being impulsive. The most important thing now was to kill Jitian. Only then would they be able to obtain the God Devourer sword. The three saints' projections attacked at the same time. Their power was earth-shattering. Every move they made destroyed the clouds. Just 3 juniors. Even if I'm just a Yuan spirit, I can kill you all with a single hand. Jitian roared at the sky and fought the 3 saints' projections. As for the God-devouring demonic sword, it continued to condense a flesh and blood devil embryo. The flesh and blood devil fetus continued to shrink until it turned into a human-shaped ball of flesh and blood. Vaguely, an extremely powerful fluctuation was emitted from it. Kill Jitian as soon as possible. We can't let him reconstruct his body. The seventh Star Lord said loudly. Eternal Sun Palm. Dongfang Haoyu's palm pressed down like an exploding sun. Eastern Flow Sword Art, Sword Slaughter the 9 Heavens. Wen Donglu's sword light exploded, sweeping across the 9 heavens. Extreme transformation of stars, heavenly slash. The seventh Star Lord raised his hand and a 1,000-foot-long sword of stars appeared, slashing down at Jitian. The 3 saint projections no longer held back and completely unleashed their trump cards. Come at me. When have I ever been afraid of anyone? 13 demonic swords, demonic slaughter. Jitian also executed his ultimate move. The void was destroyed and the devil sword chi swept across the universe. The intense collision shook the sky, startling all the cultivators in the periphery. But to everyone's surprise, even when the 3 saint projections joined forces, they were still unable to suppress Jitian. Although the 3 sages were only projections, Jitian was only in his primordial spirit form. His current strength was probably less than 1/10 of his peak state. But even if it was less than 1/10 of his strength, it was still enough to fight against the 3 saint projections. What kind of terrifying strength was that? After another 15 minutes, the God-devouring demonic sword finally formed a body from the flesh and blood devil fetus. The body was well-proportioned and slender, containing an unparalleled terrifying strength. After all, it was the God-devouring demonic sword that had absorbed an endless amount of flesh and blood essence to form the pure demonic body. The body is finally formed. I shall reappear in the world and unleash the blood calamity of all living beings. Seeing this, Jitian laughed out loud and was about to enter the pure demonic body. At the same time, in a mortal city in the Saint Origin dynasty, a middle-aged man in coarse clothes was walking among the crowd with his hands behind his back. His face was extremely ordinary and he was the kind that could not be found in a crowd. But what was shocking was that no one in the surroundings seemed to be able to see him. This ordinary-looking middle-aged man was clearly walking in the middle of the crowd, but no one around him noticed his existence. This ordinary-looking man was looking in the direction of the Tianhuang Plains with a faint light in his eyes. If little Fatty was here, he would definitely scream out in shock. Because this middle-aged man was his master, Xing Tianyi. It's about time. My disciple, your destiny has arrived. This world has already decayed and the calamity has arisen. It needs to change the world and change it. The middle-aged man, Xing Tianyi, slowly rose into the sky, but no one in the surroundings noticed him. High up in the sky, Xing Tianyi raised one hand and formed a hand seal. Demonic Sword Emperor, Xiran, do you really think that the sword sect did not leave any means to deal with you? Xing Tianyi muttered to himself. Just as he was about to make a hand seal, Yi Zichen's eyes lit up. On the Tianhuang Plains, little Fatty's face suddenly froze. When the demonic sword god devourer appeared, little Fatty had been standing there in a daze as if he had lost his soul. At this moment, boundless pitch-black sword chi suddenly surged out from his body. A terrifying sword essence that wanted to devour everything spread out from his body. This sudden scene caused everyone to be stupefied. Yi Guchen, who was lying in a pool of blood and was about to die, also raised his head with difficulty and looked at little Fatty, whose aura had suddenly changed. Little Fatty was stunned. After the seal in his body was broken, countless memories came flooding in. In an instant he understood everything. So I am actually, little Fatty muttered to himself as if he did not dare to believe it. A huge illusory image of a ferocious beast appeared on the surface of his body. It stood tall like a primordial demon mountain and released a terrifying aura. This is... Yi Guchen's pupils contracted. In the sky, Ji Tian and the three saints' projections, who were fighting, also felt the terrifying aura. How is this possible? Ji Tian's pitch-black eyes were filled with surprise. Not only them, even Elder Xing Gu, Dongfang Ao Yang, and the remaining hundreds of thousands of martial artists who were hiding further away were shocked by the illusory image of the huge ferocious beast. That is, the primordial ferocious beast, Tao Dai. A martial artist exclaimed. Everyone was in disbelief as they looked at the little Fatty with extreme shock. How could little Fatty, who had always been by Yi Guchen's side, manifest the illusory image of Tao Tai? If they had to say, there was only one possibility. Little Fatty was in a daze as he picked up the sword on his waist. The sword was called Wuzhen, and it was given to him by his master, Xing Tian. Little Fatty used to treat it as a joke to tease others, but in the end, Wuzhen sword. I am really a fucking sword. Little Fatty roared and cursed at the sky. Chapter 8:16. As the seal in little Fatty's body was removed, he regained all of his memories. To be precise, he wasn't a sword, but a sword spirit. He was the sword spirit of the immemorial demon sword, god devourer, Tao. When the six-fingered demon had forged ghost impermanence to forge god devourer, he had refined the soul of Tao Tai into the sword spirit. Later, when Ren Pingxing had destroyed Jitian's body and suppressed his primordial spirit, Ren Pingxing had destroyed his primordial spirit. In order to ensure that his primordial spirit wouldn't be destroyed, Jitian had forced the sword spirit of God Devourer out and replaced it with his primordial spirit, nurturing it in God Devourer. At the same time, he had relied on God Devourer's unique demonic chi to devour countless living beings to prepare for the reconstruction of his physical body. The sword spirit of Tao Tai that had been expelled was obtained by Xing Tianyi, who had sealed it and turned it into little Fatty. Xing Tianyi knew that the demon sword monarch wouldn't give up and would make a comeback. Therefore, he had prepared little Fatty as a backup. And now, Xing Tianyi had finally revealed his trump card. Yi Guchen understood everything in an instant. Why did little Fatty have such a terrifying sword intent in his body and why it was sealed? Why little Fatty could devour metals? Why little Fatty wasn't affected by the demonic chi and the demonic fetus in Eternal Demon City? It was because he was the sword spirit of God Devourer, the soul of Tao. So that's how it is. Yi Guchen had been coughing up blood. He had consumed almost all of the healing pills in his origin ring. All of the pills in the bronze cauldron had also been consumed. All of Yi Guchen's quasi-sage herbs and various treasures had also been refined. However, he still couldn't stop the life-devouring power from spreading in his body. His life was now like a candle in the wind. Little Fatty, who had awakened all of his memories, looked at Yi Guchen, who was lying in a pool of blood, and his small eyes flashed. Disciple, go. Complete your destiny and become the sword spirit of God Devourer again. Complete your master's task. A voice sounded in Little Fatty's mind. Yes, master. Little Fatty's expression changed. It was Xing Tiany's voice. Fatty didn't hesitate any longer. He looked at Yi Guchen and then transmitted a message. Brother Yi, I only have the few of you as my friends. Even if I become the God Devourer sword spirit again and lose all my memories and my identity as a Little Fatty, I will still think of a way to save you. After saying that, Little Fatty's body soared into the sky. Under everyone's shocked gazes, he truly transformed into the heaven-devouring exotic beast, Tao Tai. Like an ancient demonic mountain, the strange beast threw its head back and roared. Its bloody mouth seemed to be able to swallow the sun, the moon, and the stars. The Taotia's soul that Little Fatty had transformed into entered the God-devouring spirit. In that instant, the God-devouring sword broke free from Ji Tian's control. Damn it! How is this possible? Why is the God-devourer sword spirit here? Ji Tian roared furiously as his aura turned berserk. After so many years of refining, Ji Tian had almost refined the God-devourer into his personal sword. However, the Taotia's soul took back control of the God-devouring beast in an instant. Not only that, the God-devouring sword, under the control of the soul of Tao Tai, wanted to swallow the pure demon body that was formed by the demon fetus. Suppress it! Seeing that, Ji Tian's face changed. He activated his soul power and wanted to seize the pure demon body. Good chance. Hold him back. Seeing that, the 7-star master and the rest took action again to hold Ji Tian back. You all deserve to die for disobeying me. In the blink of an eye, Ji Tian shot out a shocking sword aura that pierced through the void. The 7-star master and the other two were pushed back at the same time. Ji Tian grabbed at the pure demon body, but he only managed to grab half of it. The other half was swallowed by the God-devouring sword. However, that was not the only shocking thing. After the God-devouring sword swallowed half of the pure demon body, it turned around and pierced through the void towards the celestial emperor sword in the sky. What's going on? Many of the martial artists in the distance were shocked. After the God-devouring sword broke free from Ji Tian's control, it charged towards the celestial emperor sword in the sky. Little Fatty! Yi Guchen, who was lying in a pool of blood, turned pale. Although the God-devouring demonic sword was very powerful and was ranked 34th on the Earth leaderboard, it was still very powerful. However, compared to the Heavenly Emperor, who was ranked 14th on the Heaven leaderboard, he was still a far cry. If the God-devouring sword were to attack the Heavenly Emperor sword, the only outcome would be that it would be severely injured. Damn it! Come back here! Ji Tian roared as he raised his hand to grab the Devourer God. If he were to lose the immemorial demon sword, God Devourer, Ji Tian's strength would drop by a lot. After all, the immemorial famed sword still gave him a huge boost to his combat strength. To a sage, it was an absolute killing weapon. Unfortunately, Ji Tian could not stop the God-devouring sword. Boom! A terrifying explosion sounded from the 9 heavens. It was the God-devouring sword that charged towards the Heavenly Emperor sword. The celestial Emperor sword that was suspended in the 9 heavens for eternity began to shake. Just as the celestial Emperor sword was shaking, Xing Tiany, who was somewhere in the void in the Saint Origin dynasty, smiled faintly. I was originally a mortal in this world. Once I draw my sword, I will change the world. This decaying world will be changed by this sect. Xing Tiany soared into the sky and reached out his hand to grab the Heavenly Emperor sword. Rumble! At this moment, all the martial artists in the South Horizon region raised their heads and were shocked to see this. A terrifying giant hand that covered the sky with a boundless aura was grabbing at the celestial emperor sword in the 9 heavens. How is this possible? Is someone trying to seize the celestial emperor sword? Hundreds of millions of martial artists in the South Horizon region exclaimed at this moment. How many years had it been since someone dared to touch the celestial emperor sword? At the end of the South Horizon region, there was a mountain. It was unknown how tall, how big, and how wide it was. An ancient voice came from the mountain. A variable has appeared in the sword faction. On the other side of the South Horizon region, in a mysterious spatial crack world, where the supreme immortal valley was located, an outstanding immortal shadow was wrapped in a hazy immortal light. This immortal shadow was Situ Hongshue's master, the master of the supreme immortal valley, the master of the immortal valley. 8th generation sword faction, do you really want to risk universal condemnation? The sword protector has become a robber. Your actions will bring about the destruction of the sword faction in the South Horizon region. The people of the other 8 factions won't sit by and do nothing. Countless experts in the South Horizon region were shocked because of this. The celestial emperor's sword seemed to have sensed something. It vibrated and burst out with endless sword chi. On one hand, it fought against the God Devourer sword. On the other hand, it fought against the giant hand. There was a loud explosion. The God Devourer's sword fell from the 9 heavens. The sword trembled, and its aura fell by a lot. However, what was shocking was that although the giant hand didn't get its wish to seize the celestial emperor sword, it took away part of the celestial emperor sword's power. The light of the celestial emperor's sword dimmed by half in an instant. In other words, the owner of the giant hand took away half of the celestial emperor sword's vast power. The light of the entire South Horizon region was dimmed by half. This caused all the experts to be horrified. The owner of that gigantic hand was so powerful that there was no limit to its strength. Even the 7th Star Lord, Sword Saint Donglu, and the other saints on the Tianhuang Plain were slightly shocked. His terrifying strength made the heavenly tribulation saints feel extremely oppressed. However, as the giant hand withdrew, the celestial emperor's sword stabilized again. The 7th Star Lord and the others focused their attention on the God Devourer sword that fell from the 9 heavens. The God Devourer sword had suffered some damage in the collision with the celestial emperor sword. However, it was still a primordial demon sword, and its power was still formidable. The 7th Star Lord, Dongfang Haoyu, Sword Saint Donglu, and Demon Sword Emperor Jitian reached out to grab the God Devourer sword almost at the same time. However, to everyone's surprise, the God Devourer, which had fallen from the sky, suddenly shook its sword and charged towards Yi Guchen, who was on the ground. Chapter 8:17. No one had expected this turn of events. The immemorial demon sword had taken the initiative to attack a person. And this person was not a peerless expert, but Yi Guchen, who was on the verge of death. Di Haotian's eyes were filled with curiosity as he watched the God-devouring demon sword charge towards Yi Guchen. He stretched out his hand to grab the God-devouring demon sword. However, the God-devouring demon sword suddenly jerked and emitted a pitch-black sword light that swept towards Di Haotian. Di Haotian's expression changed as he drew out the Emperor's sword to block it. With a loud boom, Di Haotian was pushed back 100 feet. His originally injured body spurted out blood again. The immemorial demon sword was extremely powerful. Even if it was damaged, it was not something a divine dwelling expert could touch. Even if the divine dwelling expert was Di Haotian, he would not be able to touch it. In just a few breaths, the God-devouring demon sword turned into a ray of black light and entered Yi Guchen's body. Not to mention the others, even Yi Guchen himself was stunned. However, on second thought, he somewhat understood. After Little Fatty turned into the soul of Tao Tai and the spirit of the God-devouring demon sword, his memories would be erased and he would gradually become a pure sword spirit. However, it was obviously impossible to erase all his memories in such a short period of time. In addition to Little Fatty's will, the God-devouring demon sword spirit was closer to Yi Guchen. Therefore, after the God-devouring demon sword left Ji Tian's control, it would naturally fall into Yi Guchen's hands. Come back! Ji-Tian's Yuan spirit immediately charged towards Yiguchen. The god-devouring demon sword was already in his bag. How could he let it escape? Even if the god-devouring demon sword had its own sword spirit, Ji-Tian could still forcefully suppress it after he reconstructed his physical body. In the face of Ji-Tian's palm attack, Yiguchen did not have the slightest ability to resist. Just the strong wind pressure alone was enough to make Yiguchen's bones crack, as if they were about to shatter. Just when everyone thought that Yiguchen would be smashed into a meat patty by Ji-Tian, something in Yiguchen's origin ring suddenly began to vibrate. This is... Yiguchen was stunned. A ball of misty green light spread out from the origin ring. Following this, a scroll appeared and spread out, protecting Yiguchen's figure. When Ji-Tian's powerful palm landed on the scroll, a loud boom was heard. However, it didn't hurt Yiguchen at all. This is the painting of the Green Lotus of Reincarnation. Yiguchen was extremely astonished. This painting was exactly what Yiguchen had obtained from the top floor of the Sword Sect Pagoda, and it was the painting of the Green Lotus of Reincarnation left behind by the 6th-generation Sword Sect Master, Ren Pingxing. Originally, Yiguchen thought that the painting of the Green Lotus of Reincarnation was only used to cultivate the Reincarnation Sword Lotus. From the looks of it now, it was definitely not that simple. At the very least, after sensing Ji-Tian's aura, the Reincarnation Green Lotus portrait appeared automatically. Ji-Tian's expression turned solemn when he saw this. Soon after, his pitch-black eyes were filled with a fury and hatred that could devour everything. This is... Ren Pingxing. You are a member of the Sword Sect. Ji-Tian looked at Yiguchen. His pair of black hole-like eyes seemed to want to devour Yiguchen. Ji-Tian didn't expect that Yiguchen would have something that Ren Pingxing had left behind on him. At this moment, the painting of the Green Lotus of Reincarnation suddenly emitted a misty green light. Within the green light, an illusory figure appeared. Green light surged around his body and his appearance couldn't be seen clearly. A bamboo cane and straw shoes are lighter than a horse. Ren Pingxing is covered in misty rain. A carefree voice was heard from the illusory figure. This voice was something that Ji-Tian would never forget. It was the 6th-generation Sword Sect Master who had suppressed him, Ren Pingxing. Ji-Tian, do you think that I didn't have any backup plans? Even though you, the Demon Sword Emperor, have dominated the world, I will suppress you again today. Within the green light, Ren Pingxing's illusory figure spoke. The entire painting of the Green Lotus of Reincarnation suddenly burst into flames. Then, in the Sword Sect Forest, in the Sword Whisper Mountain Range, the Sword Sect Pagoda that had been standing tall and filled with an ancient aura suddenly trembled. Then, it rose from the ground and charged towards the infinite plains. Ren Pingxing, are you still going to suppress me? Ji-Tian roared into the sky. Sword Chi surged and was about to destroy Ren Pingxing's illusory figure. However, at this moment, the Sword Sect Pagoda in the sky was filled with an ancient aura. It was like an ancient divine mountain that suppressed Ji-Tian. The Sword Sect Pagoda was left behind by Ren Pingxing to suppress Ji-Tian. How is this possible? I am unwilling to accept this. Ji-Tian unleashed all of his strength. His primordial spirit seemed to be on the verge of burning. Terrifying shockwaves swept across the world. The surrounding space shattered, revealing pitch-black cracks in space. The ground trembled and endless cracks spread out. This terrifying shockwave caused the 7-Star Lord and the others to retreat temporarily. This was because if they were too close, their sage projections would be shattered. Rumble! The Sword Sect Pagoda in the sky spun on its own. Boundless divine radiance burst out and suppressed Ji-Tian. No matter how Ji-Tian struggled and shattered the void, he couldn't break free from the suppression of the Sword Sect Pagoda. Boom! Finally, the Sword Sect Pagoda suppressed Ji-Tian's primordial spirit completely. However, no one noticed it at this moment. Just as the Sword Sect Pagoda landed on the ground and destroyed Ji-Tian's primordial spirit, a faint soul fluctuation escaped from Ji-Tian's primordial spirit. This fluctuation was too faint. Moreover, it was completely separated from Ji-Tian's primordial spirit. Therefore, the Sword Sect Pagoda didn't detect this soul fluctuation. This soul fluctuation was guided into the void. No one noticed it, and it quietly merged with a blood-stained and dead figure. That figure was Feng Manlu, whose vitality was almost gone. However, no one in the outside world noticed it. It's over. The demon has been suppressed. It's finally over. Gosh, hundreds of thousands of people died just like that. Those martial artists who had escaped far away were relieved. There were originally 1 million martial artists present. With one move, Ji Tian had killed over 300,000 people. He could be said to be a super demon. It was no wonder that he had once caused a bloodbath in the South Horizon region. Even ordinary saints weren't a match for him. The Demon Sword Emperor died just like that? Dongfang Haoyu was still in disbelief. He should be dead. I didn't expect this. Is this the means of the Sword Sect? Sword Saint Donglu sighed. The Sword Sect had been passed down in the South Horizon region for countless years. It had a long history and was even older than some overlord-class forces. The Sword Sect had only one successor and didn't have much power. However, every generation of the Sword Sect Master was a peerless expert selected from thousands of sequences. Every single one of them was an overlord. Even overlord-class forces weren't willing to offend the Sword Sect Master. Even the Demon Sword Emperor, Jitian, who possessed monstrous ferocious might and unparalleled power, was killed by the backup plan left behind by the 6th-generation Sword Master in front of everyone's eyes. Who wouldn't be afraid of the Sword Sect Master's means? However, at this moment, as Ji Tian's primordial spirit was destroyed, the atmosphere of the entire Tianhuang Plains suddenly quieted down and became a little strange. In the sky, the 7th Star Lord, Dongfang Haoyu, and Wen Donglu almost immediately separated and looked at Yi Guqin, who was lying in a pool of blood. Previously, everyone had seen that the demonic sword-devouring god had entered Yi Guqin's body. There was no hesitation. The 3 saint projections reached out to grab Yi Guqin at the same time. Chapter 8:18. Yi Guqin was already at the end of his tether and was on the verge of death. Not to mention the 3 saints' projections. Any warrior in the life and death realm could easily end Yi Guqin's life. Therefore, Yi Guqin couldn't resist the attacks of the 3 saints and could only lie in a pool of blood. He didn't even have the ability to move. Even if he took all the elixirs and sage-to-be pills in his origin ring, they couldn't heal his injuries. Even the ancient god blood, which was full of life essence, could only delay Yi Guqin's life by a little. It couldn't save him from death. It's over. All the martial artists sighed in their hearts when they saw this scene. Since the ancient demon city was destroyed, Yi Guqin, who was only in the life and death realm, had been refreshing everyone's understanding of him. Whether it was using the Eye of the Void, taking back the Khanate Sword Embryo, or severely injuring Gu Xiaoyang. Or taking the 9 Deaths No Regrets elixir, burning his life, borrowing a sword from the heavens, and severely injuring Di Haoyin. In the eyes of the people present, things that were almost impossible to achieve were turned into reality by Yi Guqin. Who would have thought that Yi Guqin could severely injure 2 of the top 10 young masters of the South Sky region by himself? Not to mention the various forces behind Yi Guqin. The terrifying chaotic world demonic ape, his peerlessly graceful master, Feng Manlu, Shui, who possessed the heavens whale phenomenon, and the fake Saint Shui Yiqing behind her, and even the southern refined Saint Wen Tianfeng were all his masters. Who would have thought that a little genius from a low-level dynasty would have such amazing forces behind him? But unfortunately, no matter how many miracles Yi Guqin could create, he was already dead. In the hands of the 3 saints, he was just a fish waiting to be slaughtered. It's finally over. When Yi Guqin dies, I can take back the Khanate Sword Embryo, Gu Xiaoyang sneered. In the distance, the remaining 600,000 to 700,000 warriors also focused their eyes, wanting to see the end of this chaos. Which overlord would the ancient demon sword god-devouring sword fall into? Yi Guqin? Yan Wushuang covered her red lips as tears streamed down her cheeks. She could not imagine what kind of pain that proud and unyielding youth was going through at this moment. What made Yan Wushuang's heart hurt even more was that she could only stand there and watch, and was unable to help him. The other disciples of the Sword Sect's pagoda forest were also trembling. The three saints all reached out to grab Yiguchen. Right now, only the three of them had the ability to fight for the demon sword. Even Elder Xinggu and Dongfang Aoyang, the two false saints, were unable to join the battle. Looking at the three saints who were descending from the sky, Yi Zichen thought to himself. Yiguchen, who was lying in a pool of blood, curled his lips into an unprecedentedly cold smile. Strength. Only with great power could one dominate everything. Yiguchen now had the strength to sweep through the younger generation. However, he was still far from being able to compare with the powerhouses who stood at the peak of the South Horizon region. If I can survive, there will be a day when I will make all of you pay with your blood. Yiguchen's pupils were tinged with blood red. The God Devourer sword, which had entered Yiguchen's body, seemed to emit a demonic aura that infected Yiguchen. After all, the God Devourer sword was a demon sword, a ferocious sword with a demonic nature. It was not a sword of a gentleman. This would also affect Yiguchen, causing his pitch-black eyes to be filled with a demonic charm. Boom! The three saints' giant hands pressed down on Yiguchen's body at the same time. The ground crumbled, and smoke and dust filled the sky. Hundreds of thousands of gazes gathered at this moment. Was Yiguchen finally dead? Just as everyone was thinking this, a strange look appeared in the eyes of the three saints. Rumble! A terrifying wave of energy rippled out from the smoke and dust, causing the surrounding ground to crack. It was not the power of true Qi, but soul power. Boom! There was another explosion, and a vigorous soul power rippled out in all directions, scattering the smoke and dust. Under everyone's astonished gazes, an illusory figure blocked in front of Yiguchen. The pupils of all the martial artists present froze at this moment, and their expressions froze at this moment. Yiguchen still had a trump card? Not to mention them, even Elder Xinggu and the other false saints were shocked. The various powers behind Yiguchen had already surprised them. Now, there were even more complications? Everyone's gazes were uniformly cast on the illusory figure standing in front of Yiguchen. The figure was a man in green. He had a handsome face, and there was a supreme majesty between his brows. Although his figure was illusory, at this moment he was like a pillar that supported the sky. It gave people a sense of security that even if the sky collapsed, he would still shoulder it on his shoulders. It's the primordial spirit body again. Some martial artists exclaimed. Previously, the demon sword emperor, Vian, had the primordial spirit body. No one expected that Yiguchen was hiding a peerless expert with the primordial spirit body. Even Yiguchen himself was surprised at this moment. This figure was naturally Su Qingyu's primordial spirit in the soul-accumulating coffin. The once youngest heavenly tribulation saint of the Su clan appeared again after a long silence in the soul-accumulating coffin. It's you, Su Qingyu. Your primordial spirit hasn't been annihilated? In the sky, Sword Saint Dongliu's eyes were filled with extreme surprise. Back then, the Heavenly God Sword sect had joined forces with other forces to besiege the Su clan. Therefore, when Donglu of the Heavenly God Sword sect had some understanding of Su Qingyu's situation. At that time, although Su Qingyu was powerful, he was still young. In the end, the Heavenly God Sword sect's sect master had destroyed his physical body, leaving behind a severely injured primordial spirit to escape. Everyone thought that Su Qingyu's primordial spirit had been annihilated long ago. However, they did not expect to see Su Qingyu's primordial spirit again at this moment. I, Su Qingyu, am not willing to be annihilated until I see the destruction of the Heavenly God Sword sect with my own eyes. Although Su Qingyu was now in the primordial spirit body, he stood with his hands behind his back and his aura was majestic. As soon as he finished speaking, a majestic killing intent swept across the sky, causing the wind and clouds to change color. What? He's Su Qingyu. The genius saint of the Su clan, the youngest heavenly tribulation saint. All the martial artists present were stunned. Su Qingyu had long been a legend to them. Moreover, they had heard that he had been killed by the Heavenly God Sword sect's sect master in the battle between the Heavenly God Sword sect and the Su clan. Unexpectedly, he appeared again at this moment. The two of you kill this person first. With him here, we can't get the God Devourer. When Dong Lu said, originally, with the state of Su Qingyu's primordial spirit body, when Dong Lu and the others did not take them seriously. However, they were only projections, and their strength was not much stronger than the primordial spirit body. All of you will pay the price for what you have done today. The heavenly Tao is reincarnation. Su Qingyu's voice was mighty as he raised his hand. An extremely terrifying spiritual power surged out and caused the space in front of him to slightly distort. Oh no! Su Qingyu is trying to escape. Seeing this, when Dong Lu suddenly said, the Seventh Star Lord and Dongfang Haoyu also reacted. They did not hesitate at all and attacked directly. Powerful waves of energy rushed toward Su Qingyu. Su Qingyu frowned slightly. He was nourished by Yi Guqin's chaos soul power, and the waves of energy from the saint's attack just now had awakened him from the soul-accumulating coffin. Even so, Su Qingyu's strength was extremely limited at this moment. After all, Yi Guqin's chaos soul power was just a drop in the bucket for his primordial spirit body. Su Qingyu raised his other hand, and a translucent soul power surged out, resisting the three saints' attacks. There was a loud bang and ripples burst out. Su Qingyu's primordial spirit body, which was already illusory, became even more transparent. His other hand was still reaching into the void, and he released what little soul power he had left, distorting the space. Everyone, one more time, he can't hold on. Sword Saint Dong Lu said loudly. The three saints attacked again. Open! Su Qingyu shouted in a low voice, and his soul power surged out. With a crack, the space in front of him was directly distorted and shattered by Su Qingyu's powerful soul power, revealing a pitch-black space crack. Little guy, go! Su Qingyu frowned, and his soul power wrapped around Yi Guqin's body. Then he escaped into the space crack. On the other side, the divine condor hurriedly grabbed the unconscious Blackie and rushed toward Yi Guqin, entering the space crack together with him. Do you think you can escape? How could the three saints allow Su Qingyu to take Yi Guqin away? They attacked again, and Su Qingyu turned around to block. With a loud bang, the space crack began to become unstable and showed signs of collapsing. Su Qingyu's primordial spirit became transparent again. Apparently, he had been severely injured. Su Qingyu can't hold on anymore. Last move. Seeing this, the three saints attacked directly. They wanted to shatter the space crack along with Yi Guqin's primordial spirit. Then, Yi Guqin and the God Devourer sword would not be able to escape. Su Qingyu frowned. Just as he was about to collapse his body for the last time, all of a sudden, somewhere else, the void suddenly shattered. A snow-white and slender hand, as if it had broken through billions of layers of space, broke through the air from a very distant place. It collided with the moves of the three saints, and a loud boom shook the heavens and the earth. Who is it? The three saints were shocked. Even Su Qingyu was surprised. He looked at Yi Guqin and said, "It seems that you have someone protecting you, that hand." The extremely weak Yi Guqin's eyes suddenly focused when he saw the jade-like hand that had broken through the space. At the same time, within the shattered space, a clear and cold voice came from afar. Starry Sword Pavilion, Celestial Sword Sect, Dongfang Family. Very well, you dare to kill Chen. If there is a chance in the future, I will definitely pay a visit to your sects. This voice sent Xuanzu, Yi Guqin said in surprise. Chapter 8:19. Yi Guqin's aunt, Xuanzu, had parted ways with Yi Guqin in the Divine Origin Dynasty's Milky Way prefecture. They had never seen each other again. Xuanzu had once told him that when Yi Guqin truly grew up and became famous in the Nantian domain, she would come back to him and tell him some secrets, including Yi Guqin's father. However, Yi Guqin did not expect Xuanzu to make a move at this moment. Moreover, Xuanzu's strength was far beyond Yi Guqin's imagination. She was able to break through the endless space and block the attacks of the three saints' projections. This meant that Xuanzu was at least at the level of a heavenly tribulation saint. So powerful. Someone is helping Yi Guqin again. Could it be another saint? Oh my god, what is Yi Guchen's background? He even has a saint backing him. Is this the background of a genius from a low-level dynasty? Everyone's faces were filled with astonishment as their scalps went numb. There were too many forces behind Yi Guchen. Now, there was a saint helping Yi Guchen escape from a distant place. Senior brother Yi, who is he? All the disciples of the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest were stunned. Only now did they realize that their understanding of Yi Guchen was still too shallow. Yi Guchen's background was definitely not that simple. After Xuansu made a move and blocked the attacks of the three saints, Su Qingyu led Yi Guchen, the Divine Eagle, and Blackie into the spatial rift safely. Yi Guchen glanced at the three saints. He glanced at Elder Xinggu and the others. He also glanced at Di Haoyan, Gu Xiaoyang and the others. His face was unprecedentedly cold. Heavenly God Sword Sect, Starry Sword Pavilion, Dongfang family, just you wait. If I don't die, I will definitely flatten all of you in the future and… Yi Guchen turned to Di Haoyan. When he saw the Renhuang sword in Di Haoyan's hand, which was wrapped in a golden crystal, there was a hint of pain in his eyes, but it was immediately drowned out by a bone-chilling coldness. Di Haoyan, if I don't die, I will kill you no matter where I go. That furious roar, like that of an Azura from hell, resounded through the world. Rumble. Above the firmament, there was the sound of thunder exploding, as if the heavenly Tao had made an oath. As Yi Guchen spoke, his figure disappeared into the depths of the spatial crack. After that, the pitch-black spatial rift slowly closed. The entire place was deathly silent. Not a single sound could be heard. Yi Guchen actually escaped. Many people were in a daze. In such a hopeless situation, Yi Guchen was actually able to escape. So what if he escaped? That Yi Guchen took the 9 deaths without regrets pill. It's only a matter of time before he dies. Some warriors shook their heads and sighed. Indeed. Many people nodded. After taking the 9 deaths without regrets pill, there was no doubt that one would die without a doubt. Damn it. Even the projections of the 3 saints could not remain calm, their faces gloomy. They were not angry at Yi Guchen for escaping. Yi Guchen was definitely going to die. What they were angry about was that Yi Guchen had escaped with the God Devourer sword. That was the primordial demon sword. Even if it was damaged in the collision with the Celestial Emperor sword, it could still be nourished and recovered. For you, how dare you obstruct the 3 overlords? The 7th Star Lord of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion turned to another spatial crack. It was from this crack that a jade-like hand had reached out and blocked their attack. Otherwise, Su Qingyu and Yi Guchen would not have been able to escape. So what if you're an overlord? You reap what you sow. What you did today will be the source of your destruction in the future. A clear and cold voice rang out from the distant void. Ah, then I'll see who can destroy my heavenly god sword sect. Sword Saint Donglu laughed in anger. An overlord force had stood firm in the South Horizon region for thousands of years. It was not something that Yi Guchen, who was destined to die, could destroy. The crack in the void slowly closed. The entire heavenly wasteland plains, which was in tatters, fell completely silent. Find the God Devourer, even if you have to turn the entire South Horizon region upside down. The 7th Star Lord shouted coldly. Dongfang Haoyu and Wen Donglu also gave the order. Although Yi Guchen was definitely going to die, the God Devourer's sword had left with him. They had to find it. Yes. Elder Xinggu and the others did not dare to delay and hurriedly sent the message. Not to mention the 3 overlords. In a few days, the entire South Horizon region would be in an uproar. All the overlords would want to find Yi Guchen's body and seize the primordial demon sword. Kill me? Not to mention that you're definitely going to die. Even if you can survive, what can you do to me? When I return to the sect, I'll definitely break the seal of the human sovereign sword in 3 years at most. At that time, I'll refine both the sword and the person. How many people in the younger generation of the South Horizon region can be my mesh? Di Haotian stood in the void with a cold expression. The wound on his chest had begun to heal. As a 10th grade supreme talent, his recovery ability was extremely strong. Although he had suffered a great loss at the hands of Yi Guchen and his reputation had been damaged, at least, Di Haoyan had finally obtained the human sovereign sword. On the other hand, Gu Xiaoyang's expression was extremely ugly. Now that Yi Guchen had escaped, it would be extremely difficult to get the Khanate sword embryo back. Gu Xiaoyang could not help but look at Yi Zhongyue. Fairy Zhongyue, then? Gu Xiaoyang hesitated. You don't have to say anything. Gu Xiaoyang, you and I are not meant to be. Yi Zhongyue did not say much. She was not in a good mood because the Khanate sword embryo was lost. Her wish to merge with the Khanate indestructible sword embryo had been shattered. This. Gu Xiaoyang looked as if he had swallowed a fly. This time, not only had he been severely injured by Yi Guchen, but he had also lost the Khanate sword embryo. It was impossible for him to dual cultivate with Yi Zhongyue. He had suffered a double loss. Yi Guchen is despicable. Gu Xiaoyang clenched his fists tightly, the veins on his temples throbbing. After losing the Khanate sword embryo, his strength would be greatly reduced. It was uncertain whether he could keep his position as one of the top 10 young masters. I have to go back to the sword pavilion and cultivate in seclusion. When the next battlefield of talents opens, I must become stronger to keep my position as one of the top 10 young masters, Gu Xiaoyang thought to himself with a ghastly expression. Humph, the three forces. Very well, I won't let this matter rest after forcing my disciple to death. Duan Tianfeng glanced coldly at the seventh-star lord and the others, then left with sword Saint Guyun and the others. The three saints glanced at Duan Tianfeng and frowned slightly, but they did not take action. No matter how poor Duan Tianfeng was now, he used to be a south-forging saint. Many experts were indebted to him. If they killed Duan Tianfeng, it would cause a lot of trouble. Sigh. Kenpo, Princess Fengxi, and the others sighed softly. Everyone in the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest was silent. Let's bury all the corpses in the building first. Yen Chang's voice trembled slightly when he said this. However, it's gone. Master Feng Manlu's body is gone. Chapter 8:20. That was because the previous battle was too intense. Therefore, Yen Chang'e and the others from the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest could not get close to the central battlefield. Naturally, they could not retrieve Feng Manlu's body. However, when they looked at the place where Feng Manlu's body had been, there was nothing there. How is this possible? Yen Chang'e's expression changed. Could it be that Senior Feng Manlu is still alive? Some disciples asked hopefully. How is this possible? Many people shook their heads. Judging from Feng Manlu's condition, it was obvious that he had sacrificed his life. It was impossible for him to survive. Perhaps he was destroyed in the aftermath of the battle. Some disciples from the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest thought sadly. Yen Chang'e also shook his head and sighed. Then he said, everyone from the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest, follow me back to the Swallow Cloud Dynasty. All the disciples lowered their heads and looked sorrowful. Yi Guchen? Yen Wushuang's eyes were empty and tears could no longer flow out. Shuang, do you really believe that junior brother Yi is dead? Ji Ling asked. I don't want to believe it, but... Yen Wushuang bit her lips. How could he not die after taking the 9 deaths no regrets pill? I think that junior brother Yi is a person who can create miracles. A person like him will not die so easily. One day, he will definitely return. Ji Ling comforted. Really? Yen Wushuang could not help but hold on to a glimmer of hope. Shuang, all the more we must live well so that we will not let junior brother Yi down. I will always be by your side. Ji Ling held Shuang's hand and said affectionately. Yen Wushuang nodded with certainty and hope in her heart. She did not want to believe that the proud and unyielding young man would die just like that. The entire Tianhuang plain fell silent after Yi Guchen escaped. However, in this silence, a beautiful figure in a snow-white dress slowly woke up. It was Situ Hongxue, who had been knocked unconscious by Grandma Withered Flower and moved to a safe place at the edge. At this moment, Situ Hongxue opened her beautiful eyes, which were filled with confusion. Not far away, Some warriors who had not left yet saw Sidu Hongxue wake up and started whispering to each other. They clearly knew the identity of Situ Hongxue. She was from the Supreme Immortal Valley, so they didn't dare to approach her. Why am I here? Sidu Hongxue was at a loss. Within his heart, the 7 extinction demon heart was beating loudly. It had completely awakened. Sidu Hongxue's memories were still there, but her memories of Yi Guqin were blank. She suddenly sensed something and slowly opened her jade-like hands. A jade-colored hairpin came into view with a sentence engraved on it. If the heavens had feelings, the heavens would also grow old. For some reason, when Sidu Hongxue saw this hairpin and heard these words, she felt a sharp pain in her heart for no reason. They seemed to have forgotten something. Situ Hongxue murmured. She wanted to cry, but found that she could no longer shed tears. It was as if she had lost all her emotions. All that was left was a sad calm. Sidu Hongxue clenched the jade hairpin tightly. She had a feeling that this jade hairpin was left for her by someone very important to her. However, she couldn't remember who had left the jade hairpin for her. Let's go back to the Supreme Immortal Valley first. Sidu Hongxue didn't stay here for too long and floated away. Some of the warriors who were watching from afar were puzzled. Hey, why is that fairy from the Immortal Valley expressionless? Didn't she use her life to save Yi Guqin's life before? Yeah, that Yi Guqin took the 9 deaths no regrets pill and will definitely die. That fairy didn't feel the slightest bit of sadness. She seemed very calm. Some of the warriors were surprised by Situ Hongxue's attitude, but no one explained anything. Everything that happened in the heavenly wasteland plains would soon spread throughout the South Horizon region. Yi Guqin was undoubtedly the eye of the storm. Not only did he have so many trump cards, but he was also able to severely injure Gu Xiaoyang and Di Haoyan with his life and death realm strength. Many people sighed. If Yi Guqin didn't die, he was destined to become one of the 10 great young masters. But unfortunately, Yi Guqin took the 9 deaths no regrets pill in front of everyone. Therefore, no one thought that Yi Guqin could survive. Just as the warriors in the heavenly wasteland plains began to leave. Outside the Tianhuang plains, a blood-drenched figure staggered as he stumbled. Both of his hands were hugging his head, while his handsome face seemed to be constantly changing. Lightless Sword King. Feng Manlu, no. You are Demon Sword Emperor. Tian, Feng Manlu. Feng Jian. This figure was none other than Feng Manlu, who had disappeared from the heavenly wasteland plains. Everyone thought that Feng Manlu had died and that his body had been shattered in the aftermath of the battle. Who would have thought that a wisp of Jitian's remnant soul had entered his body? Ah! Suddenly, Feng Manlu knelt on the ground and roared into the sky. Billowing demonic aura spread out from his body, bringing with it a terrifying aura that could make the heavens tremble. Then, Feng Manlu fell silent and breathed heavily. His eyes, which were hollow due to his loss of sight, became as dark and deep as a black hole, bringing with it a terrifying demonic and murderous aura. Ah, Ren Pingxing, do you think you're the only one with a trump card? Little did you know that I had already used the soul-splitting technique to separate a part of my primordial spirit from the main body to leave a way out for myself. In the end, I actually used it. However, this body isn't too bad. It's actually the legendary sword spirit body. No wonder it can comprehend to the realm of oneness of heaven and man. Although its vitality is almost gone, it can be restored with half of the pure demon body. However, this person's soul will is too strong. Even I can only choose to merge with it and suppress it. I can't completely destroy it. At this moment, Feng Manlu's handsome face carried a hint of evil charm. An extremely pure and vigorous lifeblood energy suddenly surged out from his broken and decrepit body. Shui Yiqing had snatched away a small part of the demonic fetus to awaken Ji Ru Qian Shui. The rest had been refined into the pure demonic body. Jitian's primordial spirit had snatched away half of the pure demonic body and was using it to repair Feng Manlu's broken body. The other half had been swallowed by the god-devouring demonic sword. From now on, I'm the demonic sword emperor, Feng Jian. I'll return to the dark world to recover my strength. In the future, I'll personally destroy the sword sect. I'll also take back the god-devouring demonic sword. Ha! If that brat doesn't die, the master and disciple will kill each other in the future. Ha! Feng Manlu. No, it should be Feng Jitian laughed out loud. His black hair danced wildly and shook the surroundings. It was hard to imagine, given Feng Manlu's talent and temperament. In addition, the demonic sword emperor had terrifying strength and various methods. With these two powerhouses fusing together, what was born in the future would be a peerless dark powerhouse that would shake the entire South Horizon region and even the entire 9 domains. As the matter of the Tianhuang Plains gradually calmed down, the news began to spread throughout the South Horizon region. In a faraway region, on a cloud-shrouded mountain peak, a beautiful woman in a white robe stood there quietly. There was a lotus mark on her fair forehead. Her face was covered with a layer of white gauze, revealing only a pair of watery eyes. Her snow-white robe fluttered in the wind, making her look like an immortal. Yi Guchen would definitely recognize her if he were here. She was his aunt Xuansu. However, she was different from Yi Guchen's impression of Xuansu, who had become ugly because of the 7 fiends' heart-devouring poison. At this moment, a breeze blew over and lifted a corner of Xuansu's veil. What was revealed was a corner of her incomparably fair and beautiful face. Chinner, I believe that you won't die just like that. You're a member of that clan. You won't die just like that. Chaos is coming, and calamity is coming. Only by growing up quickly can you rise up. I believe in you. Xuansu's voice was gentle and filled with longing. However, she couldn't go and find Yi Guchen now because she had more important things to do. Xuansu believed that Yi Guchen's legend would rise again in the South Horizon region soon. There was endless turbulence in the void. Su Qingyu used what little soul power he had left to open a space crack and leave with Yi Guchen and the others. However, he didn't have enough energy to choose a location. Little guy, it's up to fate whether you live or die. Su Qingyu's soul power surged and wrapped around the unconscious Yi Guchen. Then he opened a space crack and landed somewhere else. The divine condor was curled up in Blackie's arms. Blackie had an indestructible demon body. Even if it was severely injured by the space storm, it could still recover. However, they fell out from another space crack. Chapter 821. The Yin dynasty was located to the north of the Sword dynasty. It was one of the 10 dynasties that were vassal to the Sword dynasty. Although the Sword dynasty was not an overlord class force, it was equivalent to a quasi-overlord class force. As the number 1 dynasty in the South Horizon region, the Sword dynasty naturally had many vassal dynasties. In the south of the Yin dynasty, there was an extremely remote Heavenly Moat Mountain range. At this moment, outside the Heavenly Moat Mountain range, a group of carriages was traveling on a path overgrown with weeds. Among the caravan, there were a lot of shiny metal ores. They were obviously rare items. I didn't expect to find Xian Luo silver crystal in this remote Heavenly Moat Mountain range. This is a top-grade mineral. Yes, Miss is about to go to the Sword dynasty. This Xian Luo silver crystal is also a rare treasure in the Sword dynasty. In front of the carriages, there were 2 middle-aged guards who were leading the way. Their auras were both at the Spirit Bridge realm. Wait, I smell blood. One of the guards suddenly waved his hand, and the entire group of carriages stopped instantly. Luo Shun, why did you stop? In the middle of the group, there was an exquisite and luxurious carriage that emitted a faint fragrance. A jade-like hand lifted the curtain, and a beautiful woman in purple clothes peeked out. Second miss, I smell blood. Luo Shun said as he followed the smell. Suddenly, he found a figure covered in blood in the bushes not far away. Luo Shun went forward to investigate and found that the figure was a young man covered in wounds. Even a guard like him who had been on the receiving end of blood all year round was frightened. He's still not dead? Luo Shun was surprised. This figure was seriously injured, but he still had a breath of life left in him. What's going on? The beautiful woman in purple clothes walked down from the carriage, followed by an even younger girl. The girl was in a light green dress. She had a round oval-shaped face, and her skin was crystal clear. Her black eyes showed the lively and playful look of a young girl. The woman in purple clothes went forward and smelled the unpleasant smell of blood. She frowned and said, "Let's go, there's no need to care about this person." "Second sister, he's not dead yet?" the oval-faced girl said with pity in her eyes. "Little Kuei, this person's life force is almost gone. It's impossible for him to survive." The purple-clothed woman shook her head. "No, he's still alive." The girl named Xiao Kuei took out a pill and stuffed it into the unconscious youth's mouth. "Little Kuei, is the quasi-sage elixir wasted like this?" The purple-clothed woman frowned. "Cough, cough." The young man coughed slightly, but he still didn't wake up. "Guard Luo Shun, please put him in my carriage." Xiao Kuei said. "This person's origin is unknown. If we rashly save him, we might get into trouble." The purple-clothed woman glanced at the youth covered in blood with disgust and shook her head. Her name was Han Ziqiong, and her personality was more realistic. Sister Ling Xian said that saving a life is better than building a 7-storied pagoda. Xiao Kuei nodded and said with certainty. Han Ziqiong was speechless. After all, their eldest sister, Han Lingxian, was the most brilliant swordswoman in the Sword Dynasty. She might even join the 5 great academies of the Sword Dynasty. Afterward, Xiao Kuei took care of the unconscious youth in the carriage. This youth was naturally Yi Guchen, who had escaped from the spatial rift. He lay in Xiao Kuei's carriage. Han Ziqiong, on the other hand, sat in the other carriage. 2 days later, Yi Guchen coughed dryly and slowly opened his eyes. "You're awake." A delicate voice rang out. A pair of big, watery eyes entered his vision. "I'm not dead yet." Yi Guchen felt weak all over as he muttered to himself. After a full quarter of an hour, Yi Guchen's chaotic mind finally recalled everything that had happened. Su Jianshi, Sidu Hongxue, Feng Manlu, figures flashed through his mind one by one. Yi Guchen originally thought that he would definitely die after taking the 9 Deaths regretless elixir. However, the actual situation was similar. Yi Guchen should have died when he was in the spatial turbulence. The power that devoured his life force was about to completely devour his physical body. But at the last moment, a ray of sword light appeared in Yi Guchen's body. That ray of sword light destroyed the life-devouring force of the 9 Deaths regretless elixir. That was how Yi Guchen managed to preserve a wisp of life. "It's the 3rd ray of sword light that the 8th-generation sword grandmaster left in my body to help me at the brink of death. The 3 rays of sword light at the 1-sword cliff. The first ray was used to break through the limit of his sea of qi. The second ray was used to kill 3 at the top of the forbidden violet peak. The 3rd ray was used to destroy the life-devouring force of the 9 Deaths regretless elixir on Yi Guchen's body." What kind of expert is Yi Tianxing? Even after taking the 9 Deaths regretless elixir, he was still killed by his sword light. Yi Guchen couldn't help but wonder. But now wasn't the time to think about that. Because Yi Guchen was so weak that he was no different from an ordinary person. His sea of consciousness was so dry that it was about to collapse. His sea of consciousness had almost stopped spinning. There wasn't even a wisp of true qi coming out. This time, Yi Guchen was more seriously injured than ever. To make matters worse, the divine eagle and Blackie didn't fall in the same place as him. They must have been separated in the spatial turbulence. "Little brother, are you okay? I have some pills here." Xiao Kuei took out a few sage-to-be pills. Yi Guchen wanted to refuse, but he found that there weren't any pills or sage-to-be pills in his origin ring. All of his stock of pills had been used up. His origin ring was now empty. Just as Xiao Kuei was about to feed Yi Guchen the pills, Han Ziqiong's cold voice came from outside the carriage. "Xiao Kuei, you can't even bear to take these sage-to-be pills. How could you give them to a cripple?" "Second sister, what are you talking about?" Xiao Kuei said angrily. Han Ziqiong glanced at Yi Guchen with disdain as if she was looking at trash. "He doesn't have a wisp of soul power or true qi. Even if he can be saved, he'll be a cripple without any cultivation. It'll be painful for him to live. Second sister, you're too much." Han Xiaokui pouted and stuffed the sage-to-be pills into Yi Guchen's mouth. Yi Guchen couldn't move now. He could only accept it. With this burden, our journey will be slowed down again. Soon, the Imperial Sword Monument will open. Is it worth it to waste time for this cripple? Han Ziqiong rolled her eyes and said, I don't have the power to comprehend the Imperial Sword steel anyway. Han Xiaokui pouted. Whatever. Don't come crying to me after you've been tricked. Han Ziqiong glanced at Yi Guchen coldly and ignored him. Yi Guchen didn't care about Han Ziqiong either. He was indeed very weak right now. Any tier, one demonic beast would be able to kill him. If it wasn't for Han Xiaokui's kindness, Yi Guchen might have died in the wild. Thank you, miss. Yi Guchen said with difficulty. Let's not talk for now. Have a good rest. Han Xiaokui revealed a pure smile. Yi Guchen nodded and used the sage-to-be pills to adjust his blood qi. Imperial Sword Steel? What's that? But if it's possible, I'll have to repay this little girl. Yi Guchen muttered. Yi Guchen's principle was to take revenge and repay kindness. Since Han Xiaokui was willing to help him, Yi Guchen didn't mind helping Han Xiaokui in the future. Chapter 8:22. After another 3 days, the Han family fleet gradually left the heavenly Moat Mountain range. During these 3 days, Yi Guchen had been quietly recuperating. However, his injuries were too severe. Even though Han Xiaokui had given Yi Guchen all the quasi-sage elixirs she had collected, Yi Guchen was still unable to move. Yi Guchen could only barely move. The primal chaos sea of consciousness and the ultimate sea of qi seemed to have fallen into silence. However, during these few days, Yi Guchen had found out some basic information from Han Xiaokui. Yi Guchen was now in the territory of the Chu Yun dynasty. The Chu Yun dynasty was a mid-tier dynasty. Han Ziqiong and Han Xiaokui were the daughters of the Han family, one of the 3 major forces in the Chu Yun dynasty. The current head of the Han family had no sons, only 3 daughters. They were known as the 3 flowers of the Han family. Among them, Han Ziqiong and Han Xiaokui's cultivation was only passable. Only the eldest sister, Han Lingxian, was a prodigy at the 5th level of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge at the age of 20. In addition, she had comprehended sword intent and was the most popular prodigy in the Han family. Generally speaking, prodigies of this level were only found in top dynasties. Han Lingxuan's talent was indeed extraordinary. However, Yi Guchen was more concerned about the Sword Dynasty. The Chu Yun dynasty was a vassal dynasty of the Sword Dynasty. The Han sisters would be heading to the Sword Dynasty soon. This reminded Yi Guchen that he still had the Sword Master token that Kempo had given him in his origin ring. Although Yi Guchen had won first place in the preliminaries, he had been disqualified by Song Yuyao. Not to mention that Yi Guchen was now a dead man in everyone's eyes. If Yi Guchen appeared again, he would definitely attract the attention of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion and the Sky God Sword sect. However, Yi Guchen still had the immemorial demon sword, the God Devourer, in his body. If Yi Guchen wanted to participate in the prodigy battle, there was only one way. He became the Sword Son of the Sword Dynasty. This was because the Sword Sons of the Sword Dynasty did not need to participate in the preliminaries. They could directly participate in the prodigy battlefield. Moreover, the Sword Sons would wear masks and conceal their identities. They would only refer to themselves as Sword One to Jian Shirsan. This would allow Yi Guchen to conceal his identity perfectly, preventing the Heavenly God Sword sect and other factions from discovering him. And since Yi Guchen was able to participate in the Battle of Prodigies as the Sword Son, or even as the Jiankui, it was very likely that he would join an Overlord-level faction. At that time, he would be able to reveal himself to the world as Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen really wanted to see him appear on the battlefield of geniuses as Yi Guchen of the Sword Sect. What would the expressions of his former enemies, Di Haoyan, Gu Xiaoyang, and the others be like? Just you wait. The name of the Sword Sect's Yi Guchen won't die down just like this. Yi Guchen's face was cold, and he could not help but release a murderous aura. Big Brother Dugu, have some roast chicken. At this moment, Han Xiaokui coincidentally parted the curtain and entered the carriage. When she felt the murderous aura, Han Xiaokui's delicate body trembled violently, and her small face turned slightly pale. Yi Guqin immediately retracted his aura and became deep and reserved. Big Brother Dugu? Han Xiaokui blinked, thinking that she was hallucinating. It's nothing. Thank you, Xiaokui, Yi Guqin said lightly. He was now using the alias of Dugu Bai. After all, Yi Guqin could imagine that the Heavenly God Sword Sect, Starry Sword Pavilion, and other factions would be frantically searching for him. These overlord-level factions would not easily give up on the primordial sword. Therefore, Yi Guqin had to conceal his identity for the time being. Big Brother Dugu, you're really from the Saint Origin dynasty. Looking at Yi Guqin slowly eating the roast chicken, Han Xiaokui sat beside him and asked. Yi Guqin nodded lightly. He did not expose himself and only said that his original hometown was the Saint Origin dynasty. Later, when he traveled around, he accidentally provoked his enemies and was hunted to this place. You haven't returned to your hometown for a long time, so you probably don't know what happened in the Saint Origin dynasty. Han Xiaokui seemed to have thought of something, and her beautiful eyes suddenly lit up. What's the matter? Yi Guqin pretended not to know. Of course, it's about the appearance of the primordial demon sword. The South Horizon region has gone crazy. Of course, there's also the local genius of the Saint Origin dynasty, Yi Guqin of the Sword Sect. You won't believe what he did. Han Xiaokui spoke as if she was telling a story, telling all the news she heard. Yi Guqin's expression did not change, but was secretly dignified. I didn't expect the news to have spread throughout the South Horizon region. It seems that I have to be more careful in the future. Yi Guqin frowned secretly, although everyone thought that he had died because of the 9 deaths no regrets pill. But he still could not expose his identity easily. Xiaokui, why are you talking nonsense with him? You're just trying to provoke him. After swallowing so many quasi-sage pills, he's still a cripple. Han Ziqiong's mean voice rang out again. She thought that Yi Guqin would at least have some cultivation after recovering from his injuries after taking the quasi-sage pills. But she did not expect that there was still no aura in his body. In Han Ziqiong's eyes, Yi Guqin was not even qualified to be a guard or do odd jobs. Han Xiaokui had wasted the quasi-sage pills and saved a useless cripple. Brother Dugu is not a cripple. He will definitely recover. Han Xiaokui said strongly, but she was not confident. Is that so? Since he's from the Saint Origin dynasty, he might be related to Yi Guqin of the Sword Sect, who severely injured Gu Xiaoyang and Di Haoyan, right? Han Ziqiong's face showed a mischievous smile. Of course, she did not see through Yi Guqin's identity. She was just being sarcastic. Second sister, Han Xiaokui was speechless. Not to mention that Yi Guqin was already dead. Even if he was still alive, he could not be the young man in front of her who had no fluctuation of true energy. Now, Yi Guqin had become a heaven-defying monster in all kinds of rumors. After all, even the famous Di Haoyan had suffered a great loss at his hands. So, not to mention Han Ziqiong, even Han Xiaokui did not doubt Yi Guqin's identity. Brother Dugu, don't mind her. Second sister is just like that. When we return to the Han family, I will help you heal. Han Xiaokui said with an apologetic tone. Xiaokui, our Han family will not waste our resources on a cripple. Han Ziqiong could not stand her sister's soft-heartedness. Yi Guqin did not care about Han Ziqiong's attitude. After all, for the time being, he did not have any power that was worthy of respect. However, at this moment, there was a sudden commotion outside the carriage. There was a rustling sound in the grass on both sides of the carriage. Oh no, miss, there's a situation. Guard Luo Shun shouted immediately. The surrounding guards of the Han family immediately became alert. I didn't expect to meet such a fat sheep in this wild mountain. A rough sound like sandpaper rubbing against each other rang out. Bandits with red masks on their faces appeared around them. 3 figures appeared in front of them. They were all at least at the 6th level of the Heaven and Earth spiritual bridge. Oh no, it's the blood demon bandits, Han Ziqiong said with a pale face. Chapter 8:23. There were many bandits in the Izumo dynasty. These bandits might not be particularly strong, but they were as slippery as rats and hid in the dark. Even the three major factions of the dynasty had tried to surround these bandits many times, but they had always evaded them. The Blood Demon Bandits were one of these bandits. At this moment, the House of Han's convoy was surrounded by the Blood Demon Bandits. The three figures in front were sizing up Han Ziqiang, who was in the convoy, with a playful attitude. In the carriage, Han Xiaokui looked slightly nervous. "Big brother Dugu, stay here and don't move. We'll be fine." With that, Han Xiaokui walked out and stood next to Han Ziqiang. The head of the Blood Demon Bandits was at the Tiandi Lingxiao level. The second and third leaders beside him were also at the 6th stage. On the other hand, the strongest person in the convoy was the guard, Luo Shun, who was only at the 7th stage. He could at most stop the head, but it would be difficult to stop the rest of the Blood Demon Bandits. Blood Demon Bandits, what is the meaning of this? Although Han Ziqiang's face was slightly pale, she still yelled, "What do you think we're doing?" The head said playfully. He first looked at the carriage full of Xian Luo silver crystals, then looked up and down at Han Ziqiang. Under the purple dress, Han Ziqiang's curves rose and fell. She was extremely beautiful. The head of Han Ziqiang's eyes burned with desire. His gaze once again fell on Han Xiaokui. Although she was a little young and her figure hadn't fully developed yet, she was still beautiful and extraordinarily delicate. Her teary eyes, which had a trace of nervousness, aroused the head of Han Ziqiang's desire to ravage her. "How dare you? Do you know that we're from the House of Han? Do you want to be completely annihilated in the Izumo dynasty?" Han Ziqiang felt goosebumps all over her body when the head of Han Ziqiang's aggressive gaze swept over her. Her cultivation was only at the 3rd stage of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge, so she was no match for the 3 Blood Demon Bandits. "Ha, of course I know you're from the House of Han. Who doesn't know the 3 flowers of the House of Han?" The head of Han Ziqiang said. "Since you know that..." Han Ziqiang didn't finish her sentence. The great leader smiled cruelly. "However, if we were willing to sacrifice ourselves, drag the emperor down from his horse, steal your Xian Luo silver crystals, and then kidnap you 2 beauties and hide in the mountains to live a carefree life, what can the Han family do to us?" Han Ziqiang's expression changed. This time, they had come to the Heavenly Moat Mountain range to dig out the Xian Luo silver crystals. Because they were doing it secretly and in a remote area, they did not send any guards. Who would have thought that they would run into the infamous Blood Demon Bandits? If he really fell into the hands of the Blood Demon Pirates, Han Ziqiang didn't dare to imagine what fate would befall her and Han Xiaokui. "Brothers, let's go," the big leader ordered. The surrounding Blood Demon Bandits swarmed forward. Bandits were fugitives to begin with. In this wilderness, the Han family's name really couldn't intimidate them. "Miss, let me protect you." Luo Shunchong rushed forward. "A mere stage 6 cultivation base dares to block me?" The big leader's stage 7 cultivation base erupted. The blood-red vital energy turned into a bloody claw and attacked Luo Shun. Cough! In just one round, Luo Shun was pushed back and coughed up blood. "Hee, beauty, surrender. It won't be good if you get hurt." The big leader smiled playfully and rushed toward Han Ziqiang. Snowflake sword technique. Han Ziqiang's face was pale. She drew her sword and the sword light was like snowflakes. "It's useless. You're only stage 3. Do you think you can escape from me?" The big leader attacked again. In just one round, Han Ziqiang's delicate body was pushed back and she coughed up blood. "Second sister." Han Xiaokui's expression changed. She gritted her teeth and although there was some fear in her eyes, there was more anger. She also drew her sword and attacked the big leader. "Third miss, don't..." Luo Shun was shocked. Han Xiaokui's cultivation base was only at stage 2 of the Heaven and Earth Spiritual Bridge. She was no match for the big leader. "Hee, little beauty, can't you wait?" The big leader saw this and smiled evilly. He raised his hand to grab Han Xiaokui. But at the moment when Han Xiaokui was about to be caught, swoosh! A sword light that was like an illusion swept across the sky and shot over. The big leader's expression changed. That flash of sword light made his hair stand on end. He hurriedly retreated. That flash of sword light flashed through the crowd like lightning. The blood demon pirates' heads, hearts, and other vital parts were instantly pierced through. Flowers of blood splattered out. Who is it? The big leader's expression changed dramatically and he shouted angrily. That flash of sword light was too fast. It was as if it had eyes. It could turn and accurately pierce through every blood demon pirate. A scream was heard. The big leader's eyes were bloodshot. Third brother. The person who screamed was the third leader. Even with his stage 6 of the heaven and earth spiritual bridge, he couldn't block that flash of sword light. That flash of sword light seemed to be able to pierce through everything in the world. Another scream was heard. The second leader was also killed. There's an expert helping us. Han Ziqiang's pale face suddenly showed extreme joy. It was like surviving a disaster. Han Xiaokui's gaze inexplicably turned toward the carriage. Who are you exactly? We can retreat now. The great leader shouted as he retreated quickly. That flash of sword light was too terrifying. It could pierce through everything. Even with his stage 7 cultivation, the big leader felt uneasy. But that flash of sword light once again pierced toward the big leader. Blood demon wall. The big leader's pupils shrank as he roared. Terrifying true qi condensed on the surface of his body, forming a blood-red shield. With his cultivation at stage 7, even if it was a powerhouse of the same level, it would still be very difficult for them to break through the barrier. But that flash of sword light didn't deviate and directly shot toward the big leader. I'd like to see if you can break this blood demon wall. The big leader's eyes were bloodshot. But that flash of sword light trembled. A wisp of chaotic sword light overflowed and directly broke the blood demon wall, piercing the big leader's head. The big leader's expression froze. Extreme disbelief appeared in his eyes. Then he fell to the ground, dead. Following the big leader's death, all the blood demon bandits present were pierced by the mysterious flash of sword light in less than half an hour. And that flash of sword light disappeared without a trace. The whole place was dead silent. All the Han family guards were dumbfounded. Even Luo Shun was frozen in place. All the blood demon bandits had been killed in one strike. Even if it was the big leader whose cultivation had reached the 7th phase, it was still a one-hit kill. Is there a divine palace expert hiding in the dark? Luo Shun said incredulously. I am Han Ziqiang. Thank you, Senior, for your help. Can you show yourself? Han Ziqiang cupped her fists respectfully towards the void. But there was no reply. Senior, please show yourself. The Han family will definitely thank you. Seeing this, Han Ziqiang cupped her hands again. Her tone was extremely sincere. Second sister, could it be? Han Xiaokui looked pensively at the carriage. How could it be? Han Ziqiang's expression changed slightly. She wasn't stupid. She immediately thought of it. Could it be that the person who had attacked was the cripple in the carriage? Just as Han Ziqiang and Han Xiaokui arrived in front of the carriage, the sound of someone spitting out blood suddenly rang out from within the carriage. Chapter 8:24. Han Xiaokui's expression changed immediately, and she pulled the curtain aside. She saw Yi Guchen lying on the ground. His face was extremely pale, and he was vomiting blood. Big brother Dugu, what happened to you? Han Xiaokui hurried forward and helped Yi Guchen up. I'm fine. My injuries have relapsed, Yi Guchen said as he coughed up blood. Han Ziqiang's expression changed from one of shock to one of self-mockery. What was I thinking? How could I have thought that it was this cripple who did it? Han Ziqiang laughed at herself in her heart. Luo Shun and the other guards shook their heads when they saw this. Even they had almost thought that it was this young man who did it. However, when they saw Yi Guchen coughing up blood, they immediately dismissed that thought. Han Xiaokui gave Yi Guchen some healing elixirs again, and Yi Guchen felt slightly better. Han Ziqiang said in a neutral tone, It's fine that your cultivation is crippled, but it's an eye-opener for me to see that you were so scared that you vomited blood in the face of bandits. Obviously, Han Ziqiang thought that Yi Guchen was coughing up blood because he was scared by the blood demon bandits. Second sister, Please stop talking, Han Xiaokui said to smooth things over. There was a hint of disappointment in the depths of her eyes. It was not that Han Xiaokui thought that Yi Guchen was useless. After all, she was only a 14-year-old girl who loved to fantasize. She could not help but imagine that the young man she saved from the roadside was actually a peerless genius. However, when she saw the situation before her, Han Xiaokui could only laugh bitterly to herself. She had indeed thought too much. Then, Han Xiaokui stepped out of the carriage and left Yi Guchen to rest alone. It seems that I really can't use the Khanate sword embryo anymore. Yi Guchen's face was still pale as he muttered to himself. The sword radiance that could kill everything was none other than the Khanate sword embryo in Yi Guchen's dantian. When Han Xiaokui was in danger earlier, Yi Guchen could not just sit by and watch. He forcefully activated his quiet sea of qi and controlled the innate sword embryo to attack. Because it was his innate ability, he didn't need to refine it to unleash its greatest power. And the result did not disappoint Yi Guchen. The innate sword embryo was indeed worthy of being called an innate abhijna. That sword radiance seemed to be able to cut through everything. However, Yi Guchen's injuries had yet to recover. Forcefully activating the innate sword embryo had worsened his injuries, resulting in the scene of him vomiting blood. Han Ziqiong and Han Xiaokui had no idea that the reason Yi Guchen had spat out blood was to save them. Of course, it wasn't that Yi Guchen deliberately didn't tell them that he was the one who did it. Instead, with Yi Guchen's current state, he did not dare to reveal any of his secrets. If he were to expose his innate sword embryo, not to mention his identity, it would attract suspicion. Just the innate sword embryo itself was enough to arouse the greed of others. Who knew if Han Ziqiong would be greedy and steal Yi Guchen's sword embryo? Even if Han Ziqiong wasn't such a bad person, who knew if the Han family were all good people? Once was enough for the innate sword embryo to be stolen. Yi Guchen didn't want it to happen a second time. Little fellow, you really are reckless. At this moment, a calm voice sounded in Yi Guchen's mind. This voice is Senior Su Qingyu? Yi Guchen's eyes widened in surprise. Oh, little fellow, you're really lucky to be alive after taking the 9 deaths without regrets elixir. This voice belonged to none other than Su Qingyu. However, Yi Guchen could also sense that Su Qingyu was extremely weak. After all, he was only a primordial spirit. The chaotic soul power that Yi Guchen had given him was like a drop in the bucket. Furthermore, he had collided with the 3 saints and distorted the space. Under these circumstances, Su Qingyu's primordial spirit was almost completely depleted. He could barely maintain his consciousness. Senior, it's good that you're fine. Yi Guchen sighed in relief. If Su Qingyu's primordial spirit was truly destroyed, Yi Guchen really didn't know how to face Su Jianshi in the future. Little fellow, can you tell me everything about you and Little Shi? Su Qingyu asked. Sure. Yi Guchen then told Su Qingyu everything that had happened between him and Su Jianshi. I see. Su Qingyu's tone towards Yi Guchen became even more amiable after hearing the story. Senior Su, I must save Su Jianshi. Yi Guchen's tone was resolute. It's very difficult. You don't have much time left, Su Qingyu said gravely. How much longer? Yi Guchen's eyes flashed with determination. Although the human sovereign sword has sealed itself and temporarily protected Little Shi, the Heavenly God Sword sect has primordial swords, Di Haotian's Heavenly Emperor Sword, and the Myriad Sword Monarch Sword formation. With all these methods, the human sovereign sword will definitely be forcefully unsealed in 3 years. At that time, Little Shi and the human sovereign sword will be refined by Di Haotian. At this point, Su Qingyu's tone was as cold as ice. 3 years at most. Yi Guchen muttered. In other words, I have to step into the Heavenly God Sword sect and personally take back the human sovereign sword, Yi Guchen muttered to himself. It was easier said than done. As one of the 3 great sects of the South Horizon region, the Heavenly God Sword sect wasn't easy to step into. In addition, Di Haotian was the imperial prince of the Heavenly God Sword sect. Even the saints of the Heavenly God Sword sect wouldn't allow Yi Guchen to take away the human sovereign sword. Therefore, if Higuchen wanted to take back the human sovereign sword and Su Jianshi, there was only one way, and that was to suppress the Heavenly God Sword sect. However, suppressing the Heavenly God Sword sect was something that even a saint couldn't do. Not to mention Higuchen, who was just a small life and death threshold. "Little guy, are you afraid?" Su Qingyu asked. "Su Jianshi fell into Di Haoyan's hands because of me. Even if I have to give up my life, I will step into the Heavenly God Sword sect and save Su Jianshi." Higuchen's tone was resolute and unwavering. "I believe you." Su Qingyu smiled faintly. Higuchen was fearless and had consumed the 9 deaths no regrets pill. How could he be afraid of the Heavenly God Sword sect? A person who wasn't even afraid of death was the most terrifying. "Next, I will do my best to help you. However, don't act recklessly now. If you use the innate sword embryo again, I'm afraid you'll really be crippled," Su Qingyu said solemnly. "Then what should I do?" Higuchen had a headache about his injuries. "Your sea of qi and sea of consciousness are still due to exhaustion. Your physical body is also severely injured. However, as the saying goes, there can be no construction without destruction. Since you survived, if you can recover your cultivation, you'll definitely be stronger than you are now. What you need to do next is to find a sacred medicine to nurture your sea of qi and revive it. Also, find a soul crystal or a sacred medicine to revive your sea of consciousness. As for your physical body, there seems to be an extremely powerful force sealed in your body. If you add a sacred medicine to temper your body, your physical body should be able to recover and even surpass what it was before." Su Qingyu was indeed a saint of the Su family. With just 3 simple sentences, he was able to convince Higuchen. He had already explained what he needed to do. Higuchen pondered for a moment. The power sealed in his physical body was naturally the ancient god's heart. Higuchen also felt it. After surviving a calamity, his physical body was probably not too far away from becoming a 2-star ancient god. It would be fine as long as he had a sacred medicine to temper his body. As for the soul crystal and the sacred medicine, they were even rarer than ordinary sacred medicine. It would take more than a day's effort to find all these things. "These things can only be done by you. My primordial spirit is too weak and has no power at all. It can't protect you. You can only rely on yourself," Su Qingyu said solemnly. "Of course." Higuchen nodded slightly. Higuchen didn't have the habit of relying on others. In addition, the most important thing is naturally the primordial demon sword in your body, the soul-devouring sword. This is your greatest trump card and reliance. Chapter 825. Even a saint like Su Qingyu sounded solemn when he mentioned the God-Devourer sword. Even a saint would covet the immemorial demon sword. Who would have thought that Higuchen would get it by chance? The God-Devourer sword? Higuchen's eyes lit up. Gu Xiaoyang aside, Di Haoyan had the Emperor sword and was extremely talented. If Higuchen wanted to defeat Di Haoyan, his greatest reliance would be the God-Devourer sword other than the innate sword embryo. "I haven't checked the God-Devourer sword yet." Higuchen started to observe his dantian. In his dantian, there was a pitch-black demon sword with an immemorial aura. The God-Devourer sword was silent. The sword guard was in the shape of a beast's mouth. There was a deep chaotic whirlpool like a black hole. The devourer demon chi that was faintly emitted from it made Higuchen tremble in fear. Perhaps it was because it had clashed with the celestial emperor sword. The God-Devourer sword's aura was not as strong as when it was born, but it was not weak either. After all, the demon sword was made from the immemorial demon beast, Tao Tai. Therefore, it possessed the devouring power of Tao Tai. Almost all material energy could be devoured by the God-Devourer sword and turned into nourishment for its recovery. Therefore, as long as it devoured enough energy, it was only a matter of time before the God-Devourer sword recovered. There is a sword principle in the God-Devourer sword? Higuchen could vaguely feel the special sword principle wave that the God-Devourer sword emitted. It should be the creation-level devouring sword principle. After fully comprehending it, the devouring sword light it emits can devour everything, Su Qingyu said. The sword principle of the creation realm. Yiguchen's eyes were filled with surprise. So far, Yiguchen had only comprehended 2 kinds of peerless sword essence and 1 kind of peerless sword principle. As for the creation-level sword principle, Yiguchen had not comprehended it yet. The all-creation sword principle that Dugubai had comprehended in his previous life should have reached the creation level. However, Yiguchen had yet to begin comprehending it. But don't think about it now. You'll only be able to comprehend the devouring sword Dao when you can truly control the god-devouring sword Dao, Su Qingyu said coldly. Indeed, with my current strength, it's difficult to control the god-devourer sword, Yiguchen said with a frown. This was very easy to understand. It was like a 3-year-old child who had obtained the heaven-splitting axe. He couldn't even lift it, so how could he unleash the power of a divine weapon? Not only that, but the God-Devourer sword is a primordial demonic sword. Since ancient times, it has devoured countless living beings. Its demonic nature is very strong. If this sword exists in your body, under special circumstances, it may affect your temperament and even demonize you, Su Qingyu said in a serious tone. It's actually so troublesome. Yiguchen frowned. He did not expect the God-Devourer sword to bring him so much trouble. Actually, there are pros and cons. Although the demonization will affect your temperament, the power it brings is also exceptionally great. If your temperament is tough, you can even control the time and state of the demonization. Also, if you want to completely control the God-Devourer sword, there's another way, Su Qingyu said. What is it? Yiguchen asked. I have a doppelganger refining method. It can allow you to refine a doppelganger and use the doppelganger to control the God-Devourer sword. Naturally, your original body will be able to control it at the same time, Su Qingyu said. There's such a method? But how do I refine a doppelganger? Yiguchen asked curiously. Actually, you already have the foundation to refine a doppelganger. In the God-Devourer sword, there should be a ball of extremely strong flesh and blood, Su Qingyu said. Yiguchen's eyes flashed. He gathered the remaining spiritual power and penetrated it into the dark whirlpool in the sword guard. Yiguchen only felt darkness and coldness. There was actually a chaotic space hidden in it. In the chaotic space, Yiguchen saw 2 things. One was half a body. It was the half of the pure demon body. With the God-Devourer sword, Ji Tian spent an unknown amount of time to refine the pure demon body. Yiguchen took half of it. The other thing was a ball of purple qi suspended in the air. It's the pure demon body and Zidonglai's innate purple qi? Yiguchen was surprised. When the God-Devourer sword exploded, Zidonglai was swept by the devourer demonic qi and exploded. However, his innate purple qi was preserved. This half of the body contains extremely pure demonic qi. It is a pure demonic body and is most suitable for controlling the God-Devourer sword. If this innate purple qi nourishes it, this avatar will become even stronger. In other words, the doppelganger you refine in the future will at least have the pure demon body and innate purple qi. There's such a method? Yiguchen was really surprised. If the doppelganger he refined in the future were all supreme talents with innate purple qi, how powerful would it be when combined with the cultivation of his original body? Even Di Haoyan only had 3 innate purple qi. But refining a doppelganger is not that simple. You still need to find 3 things: the core of the longevity wood, the bone-molding divine elixir, and the soul source crystal. The rarity of each of these things is not less than that of the sacred elixirs. In fact, they are even more precious. Su Qingyu sighed. As long as there's hope, I will refine this doppelganger. Yiguchen vowed. Then, Yiguchen began to examine the God-Devourer sword again. This was because he remembered a saying, forge a primordial sword and pass on the heaven-devouring secret skill. In the God-Devourer sword, there should be one of the top 10 primordial secret skills, the heaven-devouring secret skill. However, at this moment, Yiguchen felt a sharp pain in his head and felt dizzy. Yiguchen, calm your mind and focus. Don't use the power of your divine soul. Su Qingyu warned. Yiguchen could only withdraw the power of his divine soul. It seems that the heaven-devouring secret skill will have to wait until my divine soul recovers a little. Yi Guchen sighed. He was even more anxious to recover his strength. Only when he recovered his strength could he begin to use the power of the God Devourer sword. After all, it was ranked 34th on the Primordial Sword Records Earth leaderboard. The demonic sword Devourer sword still had many secrets and powers that Yi Guchen had yet to discover. But where can I find the resources to recover my strength? Yi Guchen felt a headache coming on. In the following period of time, the Han family team did not encounter any more bandits. Han Xiaokui took care of Yi Guchen as usual, but there was a hint of disappointment in her dark eyes. It turned out that the story was all a lie. It was impossible to randomly pick up a peerless prodigy on the side of the road. Han Ziqiang snorted at Han Xiaokui's naivety and thought that she had been tricked by Yi Guchen. Sigh, that mysterious senior really has the demeanor of an expert. When he saw injustice on the road, he used his sword to help and did not leave his name. He's not like those useless people who are as timid as mice and do nothing but eat and drink for free. Han Ziqiang was full of respect for the person who had helped them. At the same time, he took the opportunity to ridicule Yi Guchen openly and secretly. Yi Guchen completely ignored her. With his temperament, he would not argue with Han Ziqiang. After more than 10 days of this atmosphere, the Han family team finally arrived at an extremely prosperous and lively city. We're finally home. Han Ziqiang, Han Xiaokui, and the others finally relaxed. Chapter 8:26. Tianyuan City was one of the most important cities in the Chu Yun dynasty. It was also the residence of the Han family, one of the three major forces. When the Han family's convoy entered Tianyuan City, many people stopped to look at them. Their eyes were filled with admiration as they looked at Han Ziqiang and Han Xiaokui. That's two of the three flowers of the Han family. They're really beautiful. If we're talking about the most beautiful and powerful one, it should be that big sister, Han Lingxian. She's someone that even young Master Shen of the Shen family, young Master Bai, and the imperial family's genius, Li Jingtian, admire. Of course. Although Han Ziqiang and Han Xiaokui are not bad, Han Lingxian is too outstanding. The Han family's imperial sword steel is about to open. The Han family master has already said that if anyone can comprehend the imperial sword technique on the imperial sword steel, they can obtain the great sun dragon origin fruit. They can also choose any of the three flowers to marry. Tiske, I wonder who will be so lucky. The imperial sword tablet is not that easy to comprehend. It has nothing to do with cultivation. It depends on the comprehension of the sword principle. I think Shen Mubai might be able to comprehend it. Prince Li Jingtian is not bad either. As the Han family carriage entered, there were countless discussions on the side of the road. Han Ziqiang was obviously enjoying the admiration of the crowd. She had a faint smile on her face. However, when she thought of the person sitting in the carriage behind her, she became unhappy. If it wasn't for him, this journey would be perfect. Han Ziqiang snorted. In the carriage, Han Xiaokui was still with Yi Guchen. Xiaokui, what is the imperial sword tablet? Yi Guchen asked. Along the way, he had heard the guards talking about the imperial sword tablet. My Han family's ancestor left behind an ancestral land called the Tablet-Seeking Forest. There are countless stone tablets inside. Every steel has some sword skills and martial arts left behind for future generations to comprehend. However, in the deepest part of the steel-seeking forest, there is a wordless steel. That wordless steel is the royal sword steel, Han Xiaokui said. Oh, a wordless steel? Yi Guchen was rather interested. Although there are no words on the royal sword steel, according to the information left behind by the clan, there should be a rare royal-level sword technique hidden on the steel. Unfortunately, after so many years, no one was able to comprehend it. Even a few geniuses from the Sword Dynasty are powerless. Han Xiaokui sighed. As a member of the Han family, she had naturally tried to comprehend the imperial sword steel before, but she had gained nothing. It was too difficult to comprehend the imperial sword steel. I see. Yi Guchen nodded. Perhaps among the Overlord-class forces and the Sword Dynasty, Emperor-class martial arts could only be considered rare, but not rare. However, for a force like the Han family, an emperor-level sword art was enough to be the core martial art of the family. Yet it just so happened that they were unable to obtain the imperial sword technique on the imperial sword tablet, and it was equivalent to looking helplessly at a mountain of gold yet being unable to obtain it. It was no wonder that the Han clan was so anxious. Then what's with the opening of the imperial sword stele? Yi Guchen asked. Although my Han family's steel-seeking forest is open all year round, during a certain month, the forest will be filled with Taoist rhymes that will aid in comprehending the sword technique inscribed on the stele. That's the only possibility. If one can't comprehend the imperial sword stele at this time, then it's even more impossible to comprehend it during normal times. And it's only during this month that my Han family will open the steel-seeking forest for outsiders to attempt to comprehend the imperial sword stele. Moreover, that stinky old man even said that whoever can comprehend the imperial sword stele can choose one of the three sisters to marry. Han Xiaokui gritted her teeth when she spoke up to this point. Clearly, she was extremely dissatisfied with her father's actions. Is that so? Yi Guchen smiled faintly. To others, it might be extremely difficult to comprehend the imperial sword stele. However, to Yi Guchen, it might not be as easy as lifting a finger, but it was close enough. The sword devil talent, the enlightened sword heart, and the enlightenment ancient tree. The combination of these three factors created Yi Guchen, a peerless monster in terms of comprehension of the sword Dao. If it's possible, I might as well help the Han family, Yi Guchen thought to himself. Even if it was to repay Han Xiaokui for saving his life. By the way, Big Brother Dugu, what do you need to recover from your injuries? Han Xiaokui asked. Saint medicine or divine pills, Yi Guchen said faintly. Oh. Han Xiaokui frowned. It was obvious that she couldn't take out saint medicine so easily. However, she seemed to have thought of something. She blinked her eyes and said, Big Brother Dugu, I'll definitely think of a way for you. Thank you very much, Yi Guchen said with a smile. He didn't mind at all. Not long after, the Han family's carriage arrived at the Han family's residence. As one of the three major forces in the Chu Yun dynasty, the Han family's residence occupied 1/10 of the entire Tianyuan city. It was richly ornamented with beautiful scenery and lush gardens. The return of Han Ziqiong and the others also caused a stir in the Han family. Father, we've collected Xian Luo's silver crystal. Han Ziqiong entered the hall with joy on her face. Han Xiaokui followed behind her. Yi Guchen was also pulled into the hall by Han Xiaokui. Ha, is that so? Thank you for your hard work. A middle-aged man in a yellow robe sat in the hall. It was the Han family's patriarch, Han Shan. Yi Guchen sized Han Shan up. His cultivation was probably at the first heaven of the honorable realm in the celestial palace. He was indeed considered a top expert in an intermediate dynasty like the Chu Yun dynasty. However, for Yi Guchen, who had even seen a false saint and even the projection of a saint, he was nothing. To him, the first heaven of the honorable realm was no longer intimidating. Hey, this is... As if sensing Yi Guchen's gaze, Han Shan couldn't help but look at the unfamiliar young man with slight suspicion. It was his first time seeing a young man so calm in front of him. However, he didn't sense a trace of true qi or soul power from Yi Guchen. It was as if he was an ordinary person who didn't cultivate. Father, don't mention it. Third sister picked him up from the roadside out of kindness. He's just a cripple. Han Ziqiong curled her lips and mocked. The smile on Han Shan's face disappeared. If he had picked up a young genius, Han Shan might have had the intention to nurture him. However, no matter how he looked at Yi Guchen, he was just an ordinary person who didn't have any martial arts cultivation. By the way, Father, don't we have a sacred medicine, the great sun dragon origin fruit? Can we use it to help Big Brother Dugu? Han Xiaokui probed. Third sister, what nonsense are you talking about? How can we give the great sun dragon origin fruit to a useless outsider? Han Ziqiong's face changed as she shouted. Even Han Shan frowned slightly and said in a low voice, Xiaokui, don't mess around. A sacred medicine is so rare that it's not a joke. Seeing that her father and sister objected in unison, Han Xiaokui also pursed her lips and put on a bitter face. On the other hand, Yi Guchen heard Su Qingyu's voice in his heart. Yi Guchen, the great sun dragon origin fruit is a sacred medicine for body tempering. If you can get it, your physical injuries will be healed and even improved. A dark light flashed across Yi Guchen's eyes when he heard this. Chapter 8:27. Although Yi Guchen looked miserable and was severely injured, he was like a mortal. However, if Yi Guchen's injuries were to be completely healed, his strength would certainly soar by a large margin. For example, although his body was severely injured, it was still corroded by the 9 Deaths No Regrets elixir. Because of that, he had the opportunity to transform into an ancient god. Yi Guchen had a premonition that if he could get the body-tempering sacred elixir, he could seize the opportunity to transform and become a 2-star ancient god. Once he became a 2-star ancient god, Yi Guchen would have the power to protect himself. Even if he couldn't use his Sea of Consciousness and Sea of Qi, with his 2-star ancient god body, a normal heaven and earth spiritual bridge wouldn't be his match. Father, can't you make an exception? Isn't saving a person the most important thing? Han Xiaokui was still unwilling to give up and she acted coquettishly. Xiaokui, don't make things difficult for me. If you use the sacred elixir to save a genius, it's fine. But if you use it to save a cripple, it's like throwing a meat bun at a dog, there's no return. Han Ziqiong's words were harsh. Even people like Yi Guchen, who didn't care about criticism, frowned secretly. Her words were too much. Sigh, Xiaokui, it's not that I don't want to give it to you. I've already said that when the Imperial Sword Steel opens, whoever can comprehend the Imperial Sword Steel will get the Great Sun Dragon origin fruit and marry one of you sisters. Han Shan shook his head. This. Han Xiaokui was speechless. When Han Ziqiong saw that, she had a playful expression and she said in a mocking tone, Xiaokui, there's a way. Didn't you say that your brother Dugu is a cripple? Then let him comprehend the Imperial Sword Steel. If he comprehends it, he'll get the Great Sun Dragon origin fruit. After saying that, Han Ziqiong couldn't help but laugh. Han Shan also shook his head. For such a long time, no one could comprehend the Imperial Sword Steel. Even he, a venerable, couldn't do anything. How could the youth in front of him, who didn't even have martial arts cultivation, comprehend the Imperial Sword Steel? It would be a joke if it got out. Aren't you bullying me? Han Xiaokui's face turned red as she stomped her feet. It wasn't that she didn't trust Yi Guchen. Even her sister, Han Lingxian, whom she admired the most, was unable to comprehend the Imperial Sword Steel. It was even more so for ordinary people. Xiaokui, forget it. Yi Guchen waved his hand, not caring at all. Little Kui, take this little brother to rest, Han Shan said calmly. Yi Guchen could see the indifference and impatience in Han Shan's eyes. Let's go. Han Xiaokui puffed up her cheeks and pulled Yi Guchen away. After they left, Han Shan's face immediately turned cold. Ziqiong, I told you to teach little Kui well. Don't bring any riffraff into the house. Han Shan said with a frown. Sigh, it's all third sister's fault for being too naive. She doesn't even know that she's been cheated. I'll try my best to persuade her, but there's one more thing I need to tell father. Han Ziqiong changed the topic and told her father about how the sword light had killed the blood demon bandits. What? Why didn't you tell me earlier that you had the help of such an expert? Han Shan's expression changed again. That senior really doesn't show his true colors, Han Ziqiong said respectfully. Based on what you said, that mysterious person is probably a young prodigy even if he's not a martial expert. It would be great if I could get to know him. What a pity. Han Shan said regretfully. Han Shan was very willing to accept such a prodigy. Unfortunately, he didn't know that the prodigy he wanted to get to know had been personally pushed out of the hall by him. On the other side, Yi Guchen walked out of the hall with a calm expression. Originally, Yi Guchen would have helped the Han family obtain the Imperial Sword technique on the Imperial Sword Steel for free because Han Xiaokui had saved his life. However, he saw the coldness and disdain in Han Shan's eyes. Perhaps in Han Shan's and Han Ziqiong's eyes, Yiguchen was a person who took advantage of Han Xiaokui's naivety to gain benefits. Since Han Shan and the others had such an attitude, Yiguchen didn't need to be polite. Yiguchen was determined to get the Great Sun Dragon Essence Fruit. Beside Yiguchen, Han Xiaokui said unhappily, "I'm sorry, Big Brother Dugu. Father and the others are just a little snobbish. They're not bad people. I don't care." Yiguchen smiled faintly. "Big Brother Dugu, Xiaokui will arrange a place for you to stay first," Han Xiaokui said. Yiguchen smiled faintly and nodded. He didn't care about the Han family. However, he didn't mind helping Han Xiaokui in the Steel Forest. Next, Han Xiaokui found a courtyard and settled Yiguchen down. In the next few days, Yiguchen recuperated from his injuries. Of course, it was only to heal some external injuries so that he could regain his mobility. As for recovering his abilities completely, it would be difficult before he got the sacred medicine. At the same time, Yiguchen also found out that the Imperial Sword Steel would open about a month later. At that time, all the geniuses of the Cloud Dynasty would come. After all, it was the Han family's rare day to open the Steel Forest. In addition, if he could comprehend the Imperial Sword Steel this time, he could get the Great Sun Dragon Origin Fruit and marry a beauty. It would attract even more geniuses. However, this was nothing to Yiguchen. In the side room, Yiguchen sat cross-legged on the bed to regulate his breathing. "Ah, Yiguchen, it doesn't feel good to be treated as a mortal, right?" A nearly transparent primordial spirit floated in midair. It was a middle-aged man in a green robe. His handsome features carried a hint of dignity. It was Su Qingyu. "That's why I have to get the Great Sun Dragon Origin Fruit. At least after I become a 2-star ancient god, I can protect myself." Yiguchen smiled faintly. "I didn't expect you to be able to get the inheritance of one of the 100 clans in the universe. Actually, the reason why I can become a sage so quickly is because I got the inheritance of one of the 100 clans in the universe," Su Qingyu said. "Oh, senior, you have such an opportunity," Yiguchen said. Actually, I could pass on my cultivation method to you. However, it seems like you already have a cultivation method, so I can only give up," Su Qingyu said. Yiguchen nodded. His main cultivation method was the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra. His secondary cultivation method was the Great Sword Principle. It was obvious that he didn't have extra energy to cultivate other advanced cultivation methods at the moment. However, you don't have to feel regretful. When you complete the blood sacrifice of your doppelganger, I can pass on the inheritance of that clan to your doppelganger. Then, your doppelganger can cultivate the inheritance of the 100 clans in the universe," Su Qingyu said with a smile. When Yiguchen heard that, he couldn't help but feel a sense of urgency to blood sacrifice his doppelganger. However, it was a pity that it was difficult to find the materials that he needed. Just as Yiguchen was pondering, Han Ziqiong's unique mean voice came from outside the door again. "I say, you have almost recovered from your injuries. Do you really want to be a freeloader? Coincidentally, the Han family's forging department needs some manpower. You can be a blacksmith." When Yiguchen heard that, he wasn't angry. Instead, he found it funny. Asking a person who could comprehend the Imperial Sword Tablet to be a blacksmith? He wondered what kind of expression Han Ziqiong would have when Yiguchen comprehended the Imperial Sword Tablet. Chapter 828. In response to Han Ziqiong's harsh suggestion. Yiguchen wasn't angry, but he didn't refuse either. This was because he was being taken care of by Han Xiaokui. It wouldn't be right if he didn't do something. Su Qingyu's primordial spirit entered Yiguchen's body. Yiguchen opened the door and saw Han Ziqiong's angry face. Her eyes were filled with disdain. "Got it?" Yiguchen's tone was very calm. Han Ziqiong frowned. She thought that Yiguchen would be furious and even complain to Han Xiaokui. However, Yiguchen didn't react at all. He was very calm. This made her feel as though she had punched cotton. She couldn't speak of how aggrieved she was. "This is a blacksmith's uniform. Take it." Han Ziqiong threw a linen shirt to Yiguchen. There was a big word, iron, on it. Then, Han Ziqiong found a 4-star blacksmith with a high position in the casting department of the Han family. She secretly asked him to let Yiguchin do some hard work that was easy to make mistakes. Don't worry, Second Mississippi. I won't let this person have an easy time. The four-star blacksmith was an old man named Du Chiu. As a four-star blacksmith, he had a high status in the Han family. Even Han Ziqiong could only ask him for help. After that, Du Chiu brought Yiguchin to the blacksmith's workshop. It was located at the edge of the Han family's residence. Boy, there are more than 100 pieces of raw iron here. Temper them into iron essence in 2 hours. Du Chiu narrowed his eyes and said calmly. He seemed to be taking advantage of his seniority. TSK, how did this newcomer offend Master Du Chiu? Yeah, how is it possible to temper more than 100 pieces of raw iron in 2 hours? The other blacksmiths and blacksmiths in the workshop shook their heads secretly. It seemed that this newcomer would be bullied by Master Du Chiu again. It's that simple? Yiguchin was surprised. He thought that Han Ziqiong would find someone to make things difficult for him, but she didn't. If Han Ziqiong knew what Yiguchin was thinking, she would have vomited blood. Simple? You really don't know anything. If you can't forge in an hour, I might punish you. Master Du Chiu sneered, thinking that Yiguchin had never come into contact with forging. However, what Du Chiu didn't know was that the young man in front of him was an 8-star blacksmith, half a disciple of the southern refinement sage Mo Tianfeng. What was considered a difficult task in Master Du Chiu's eyes was a piece of cake for Yiguchin. With Yiguchin's current situation, he could easily accomplish this. After only an hour, the refined iron essence had been piled up into a square. Inside the foundry, everyone was dumbfounded. Master Du Chiu rubbed his blurred eyes in disbelief. He once again approached and carefully observed each piece of iron essence. There were no impurities, cracks, or bubbles. It could only be described with one word: perfect. Go and forge a sword with these iron essence and other materials. Master Du Chiu's old face was slightly stiff as he said again. This is asking for too much. How difficult is it to perfectly merge iron essence and iron essence? The surrounding blacksmiths and blacksmiths shook their heads. Yiguchin didn't say anything and directly started. In the end, only an hour passed. Gleaming swords were neatly stacked on the ground one after another. The shiny body of each long sword reflected Master Du Chiu's dull and funny old face. How is this possible? Even with Du Chiu's identity as a 4-star blacksmith, he couldn't help but lose his composure. Even he couldn't forge a sword with 2 materials, iron essence and iron essence, so perfect. Did second young mistress sincerely find a young blacksmith to mock me for being incompetent? Master Du Chiu thought to himself, and his face turned ugly. Obviously, Master Du Chiu mistakenly thought that Han Ziqiong had found a young blacksmith to mock him. Master Du Chiu was so angry that he glared at the surrounding blacksmiths and blacksmiths. Who was the real blacksmith? Master Du Chiu's face was ashen. He flung his sleeves and went to find Han Ziqiong. On the other side, Han Ziqiong received Master Du Chiu's message and was waiting for him in a pavilion. Master Du Chiu scolded Han Ziqiong the moment he arrived. He didn't care. Anyway, with his identity as a 4-star blacksmith, he could go to the Shen family or the Imperial family if he didn't stay in the Han family. Master Du Chiu, what's wrong with you? Han Ziqiong's beautiful face froze, and she was puzzled. What's wrong with me? Since second young mistress thinks that I'm inferior because of my seniority, I'll leave. Don't look for me for blacksmithing matters in the future. Goodbye. Master Du Chiu's mouth was like a cannon, and his saliva splashed on Han Ziqiong's face. Then he left angrily. Han Ziqiong smelled the stench of saliva on her face. Her stomach churned and she almost vomited. But what made her face more unsightly was that a 4-star blacksmith left because of her anger. Even Han Shan would be angry. After all, it wasn't easy to find a 4-star blacksmith. Damn it, what did that Duguwubai do? Han Ziqiong was so angry that her face turned green. She rushed to the blacksmith's workshop in anger. When she came in, she saw that Yiguchin was surrounded by all the blacksmiths and blacksmiths. Those blacksmiths were full of admiration. Duguwubai, what did you do? Han Ziqiang's delicate body trembled with anger, and her face turned purple. As you can see, I'm a blacksmith. Yi Guchen's tone was slightly gentler. He didn't expect that Han Ziqiang didn't make things difficult for him. Han Ziqiang's chest tightened, and she felt very sullen. Master Du Qiu was so angry that he left, but Yi Guchen looked indifferent as if nothing had happened. But soon after, Han Ziqiang found out the whole story from others. No wonder he doesn't have any martial arts cultivation. He really is a blacksmith. Because of this, Han Ziqiang's misunderstanding of Yi Guchen deepened. She thought that he was just a blacksmith with some strength. In addition, Master Du Qiu left. Han Ziqiang was severely reprimanded by Han Shan. Han Ziqiang didn't dare to target Yi Guchen, but her resentment toward Yi Guchen deepened. In addition, Han Xiaokui also found out about this and couldn't help but quarrel with Han Ziqiang. In the end, Yi Guchen said that it was good to stay in the workshop, and Han Xiaokui finally let it go. Humph, Dugubai, because of you, Master Du Qiu left, I was reprimanded by my father, and I had a big fight with my third sister. Yi Guchen, you can stay in the workshop for the rest of your life. Seeing that Yi Guchen seemed to be very comfortable in the workshop, Han Ziqiang felt even more uncomfortable. She was the one who took the initiative to target Yi Guchen, but in the end, Yi Guchen was living a good life, and she was the one who was in trouble. Yi Guchen didn't care. Because there was only half a month left before the Imperial Sword Monument opened. Yi Guchen would only stay here for half a month. Chapter 829. During this time, Yi Guchen had been living comfortably in the Han family's forge. The blacksmiths in the forge didn't dare let Yi Guchen do any work. Instead, they were all eager to learn from Yi Guchen. Master Dugu, may I ask how these two materials are fused together? Master Dugu, you can easily refine 100,000 metals. Do you have any tricks? These blacksmiths, who were usually extremely arrogant in the Han family, lowered their heads humbly in front of Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen wasn't stingy either. He'd received the inheritance of the Heaven Forge Sacred Hand, so any casual pointers from him would benefit these blacksmiths immensely. Even Han Ziqiang, who occasionally came to see Yi Guchen in a sorry state, felt so depressed that she wanted to vomit blood when she saw this scene. Not only that, but Han Ziqiang also realized that, despite her identity as the second daughter of the Han family, she was the most unwelcome person in the forge. Second miss, this is the forge. Please leave. Second miss, please don't disturb Master Dugu's preaching and answering questions for us. Although these blacksmiths didn't dare go overboard due to Han Ziqiang's identity, their attitude was still extremely cold. This made Han Ziqiang feel like she was going crazy. Why did it feel like she was the one being targeted? Of course, Han Ziqiang didn't dare throw a tantrum in the forge. If all the blacksmiths left in a fit of anger, Han Shan would skin her alive. Humph, Dugubai, what are you so proud of? Didn't you want the great Sun Dragon origin fruit? Unfortunately, the Imperial Sword Steel will open in half a month. Big Brother Mubai and the Imperial family's Li Jingtian will come to comprehend it. Given their talents, they have the highest chance of comprehending it. Dream on if you want to obtain the sacred herb. Han Ziqiang couldn't take it anymore and left with her tail between her legs. Yi Guchen couldn't help but laugh, but he didn't mind. Even Di Haotian, Gu Xiaoyang, and other members of the 10 great dukes had suffered at his hands. He did not care about a mere sky pride from the Yun dynasty. For the next few days, Yi Guchen spent his days leisurely. He was quietly waiting for the opening of the monument-seeking forest. As the day of the opening of the steel-seeking forest drew closer and closer, the flow of people in Tianyuan City became increasingly turbulent. All the geniuses in the Chu Yun Empire started to gather in Tianyuan City, waiting for the Imperial Sword Tablet to open once a year. On this day, a figure riding a winged Pegasus streaked across the sky above Tianyuan City. It was a young man dressed in white. He had a scholarly face and was very handsome. He always had a faint smile on his face, causing many girls in Tianyuan City to scream when they saw him. It's the Shen family's young master Shen Mubai. He actually arrived at Tianyuan City in advance. It's young Master Shinmubai. Not only is he handsome, but he also has strength. I heard that his cultivation base is enough to enter the 5 great Tao academies of the Sword Dynasty to train. This time, young Master Shinmubai is probably here for the Imperial Sword Tablet. I heard that he can't forget about Han Lingxian. Han Lingxian and Shinmubai are the most promising pair. Of course, Prince Li Jingtian of the Imperial family is also very competitive. Following Shinmubai's arrival, the entire Tianyuan city was in an uproar. It was obvious that Shinmubai was very famous in the Chuyan Empire. Almost everyone knew him. Shinmubai rode the winged Pegasus and landed in the Han family's residence. Han Shan even personally came out to welcome Shinmubai. Actually, with Han Shan's status, welcoming Shinmubai was condescending. But what he saw was Shinmubai's potential to comprehend the Imperial Sword Tablet. As long as the Han family could obtain an Imperial Sword technique, Han Shan did not mind lowering his status. Nephew Shin, this time, the ones with the highest chance of comprehending the Imperial Sword Tablet are you and Li Jingtian of the Imperial family. I hope you won't disappoint me, Han Shan said with a smile. Compared to the cold attitude he had towards Iguchen the other day, Han Shan was like a completely different person. I'll do my best. I'll go look for Lingxian. Shinmubai smiled faintly. He looked very calm, as if victory was in his hands. That little girl, Lingxian, is still in closed-door cultivation, and she wants to comprehend the Imperial Sword Steel by herself. Nephew, you can go look for Ziqiong and little Kuei to catch up with them first. Han Shan smiled amiably. He naturally knew that Shinmubai had always admired his eldest daughter, Han Lingxian. Shinmubai smiled and nodded. On the other side, Yiguchen was meditating and adjusting his breath in his room. Because he had not obtained the sacred medicine, Yiguchen was unable to cultivate. At this moment, the door of the room was opened. A lively figure in a light green robe flashed in. It was Han Xiaokuei. Xiaokuei, why are you free to come over? Yiguchen smiled faintly. As the time for the Imperial Sword Tablet to open approached, Han Xiaokuei also entered a state of cultivation. After all, the 3 sisters of the Han family also wanted to comprehend the Imperial Sword Tablet. Even Han Ziqiong did not come looking for trouble with Yi Guchen these past few days. Isn't it because Shinmubai is here again? Han Xiaokuei's round face scrunched up. There was a hint of disgust in her voice. Yiguchen raised his eyelids slightly. He had heard the name Shinmubai many times. He had heard it from Han Ziqiong and the people in the foundry. There were 3 most famous geniuses in the Yun dynasty. They were Han Lingxian, Shinmubai, and Li Jingtian. The 3 of them were very famous in the Yun dynasty. However, in Yi Guchen's eyes, that was all there was to them. Not to mention Di Haotian, who was a peerless genius. Even Princess Feng Shi, Crown Prince Xinghong, and other top geniuses in the preliminaries were stronger than the 3 of them. Therefore, Yi Guchen did not pay much attention to them. Humph, I feel that Shinmubai's smile is very fake. He looks like a gentleman on the surface, but he is actually thinking of ways to woo Sister Lingxian. Previously, there was a genius who confessed to Sister Lingxian, but he was beaten to a pulp by Shinmubai. Han Xiaokuei was obviously very disgusted with Shinmubai. However, at that moment, Han Ziqiong's voice sounded from outside the room. Xiaokuei, why aren't you coming to see Brother Mubai? He still came. Han Xiaokuei's face was bitter. Yi Guchen saw the man in white standing beside Han Ziqiong. He was handsome and had a smile on his face. He looked very approachable and did not have the arrogance of a genius. Yi Guchen could also feel the sword essence that was faintly emitted from his body. Obviously, Shinmubai was a genius who had comprehended the sword essence. However, Yi Guchen could also see the hidden arrogance in Shinmubai's eyes. Obviously, Shinmubai was not a person who was true to his appearance. Xiaokuei, we haven't seen each other for so long. Why don't you say hello? Shinmubai laughed. Humph. Han Xiaokuei did not say a word and stood beside Yi Guchen. Compared to Shinmubai, Yi Guchen made Han Xiaokuei feel more at ease. Oh, this brother is... Shinmubai looked at Yi Guchen. When he saw the word iron on Yi Guchen's linen clothes, there was a hint of contempt in his eyes. Obviously, he also knew that this was clothes that only blacksmiths of the Han family would wear. Chapter 830. Don't mention it. He's just a cripple without any cultivation. Han Ziqiang saw the confusion on Shen Mubai's face and immediately told him everything about Yi Guchen. Shen Mubai's expression was calm as he glanced at Yi Guchen. He indeed did not sense any true qi or soul ripples from Yi Guchen's body. As for sword intent, with Yi Guchen's cultivation level, he had long been able to restrain his aura. If he was unwilling, no one would be able to sense any sword intent ripples from his body. On the other hand, only people like Shen Mubai, who had a shallow understanding of sword intent, would faintly leak out sword intent ripples that could not be concealed. After sensing that Yi Guchen was not a threat at all, Shen Mubai also lost interest. He turned around and took out 2 jade bottles. With a hint of pride on his face, he said, "Consider this a meeting gift from me. It will be of great help to you in comprehending the martial arts in the steel-seeking forest." "Brother Mubai, what is this?" Han Ziqiang's eyes lit up. "Ancient tree of enlightenment." Shen Mubai lifted his chin slightly with a hint of pride. "What? It's actually the ancient tree of enlightenment?" Han Ziqiang was really shocked. Her jaw almost dropped to the ground. The ancient tree of enlightenment was a precious item. It had the powerful effect of helping people to comprehend the Tao. It could be said that even among the sacred herbs, the ancient tree of enlightenment was an extremely rare existence. There was even an important person who wanted to use 10 sacred herbs to exchange for 1 ancient tree of enlightenment, but he did not succeed. The Han family's only sacred herb, the great sun dragon essence fruit, could not be compared to the ancient tree of enlightenment. Even Yi Guchen was slightly surprised. Although he had the ancient tree of enlightenment in his energy center, he had only found it in the cave abode of the supremacy of the Baiming family. It was understandable that an overlord-level force would have the ancient tree of enlightenment. But in this intermediate dynasty, there was actually someone who possessed an ancient tree of Tao comprehension. This was surprising. Of course this is not the complete enlightenment ancient tree. That kind of sacred medicine is so precious that even a leaf or a branch is hard to find. The thing in this bottle is the powder ground from the leaves of the enlightenment ancient tree. It was given to me by a friend from the Sword Dynasty. It is also helpful for my comprehension. Shen Mubai smiled faintly. His words seemed modest, but there was a trace of pride in his eyes. It was obvious that to him, giving away the leaves of enlightenment was already generous. Sure enough, after Han Ziqiang heard this, her eyes were extremely bright. She took a jade bottle and carefully opened it. Immediately, a faint trace of Tao rhyme filled the air. Han Ziqiang's face lit up with joy. "Thank you, big brother Mubai. You're truly amazing. Not only were you able to befriend a genius from the Sword Dynasty, but you're also able to give such a precious item to us sisters." Han Ziqiang couldn't suppress the joy on her face. In her eyes, the leaf of enlightenment alone was extremely precious. This is nothing. Xiao Kuei, don't you want it?" Shen Mubai still had a jade bottle in his hand. There was a trace of struggle in Han Xiaokuei's pitch-black eyes. With the leaf of enlightenment ancient tree, it would definitely be of great help to her comprehension in the tablet-seeking forest. But Han Xiaokuei didn't like Shen Mubai's hypocrisy. She felt a little uncomfortable accepting Shen Mubai's gift. "Xiao Kuei, just take it. Among us 3 sisters, your comprehension is the lowest. You didn't have much comprehension in the tablet-seeking forest in the past. With the leaf of enlightenment ancient tree, you'll be able to gain something." Han Ziqiang persuaded. Han Xiaokuei's face darkened when she heard this. "I don't want it." Han Xiaokuei became angry. She crossed her arms and pouted. "I'm sorry, big brother Mubai. Third sister is not sensible." Han Ziqiang saw this and shook her head. "It's okay. The tablet-seeking forest is about to open. Since Lingxian is still in seclusion, I'll take some time to teach you sword skills. It will be helpful for you to comprehend the Imperial Sword Tablet. Shin Mubai said slowly. Really? Big brother Mubai is actually willing to teach us. Han Ziqiang felt so happy that she was about to faint. With the leaf of enlightenment ancient tree and Shin Mubai's guidance, Han Ziqiang felt that she would gain a lot from the tablet-seeking forest this time. Thinking of this, her gaze towards Shin Mubai could not help but contain a trace of tenderness. But Han Ziqiang also knew that Shin Mubai liked Han Lingxian. But in Han Ziqiang's heart, the person she admired the most, other than the mysterious person who saved her on the way, was Shin Mubai. Xiao Kuei, you come too, Shin Mubai said with a smile. Forget it. You guys go ahead. I'll just stay with big brother Dugu. Han Xiaokui was still very stubborn. She pulled Yi Guchen's arm. Oh, can this blacksmith brother help you practice your sword skills? Shin Mubai smiled faintly. Although there was no obvious mockery, the words, blacksmith brother, were enough to express his disdain. Xiao Kuei, you really think that this cripple is a prodigy? Do you know how big of an opportunity you've missed? This is all thanks to big brother Mubai's guidance. Han Ziqiang was exasperated. Forget it. It seems that Xiao Kuei still has some misunderstandings about me. But it doesn't matter. I just hope that when the tablet-seeking forest opens, Xiao Kuei won't be sad. Seeing Han Xiaokui reject his good intentions one after another, Shin Mubai's tone also became cold. He turned and left. Han Ziqiang looked at Han Xiaokui with disappointment, then glared fiercely at Yi Guchen. Obviously, she thought that Yi Guchen had used flowery words to confuse Han Xiaokui. Seeing the two leave, Han Xiaokui, who had her hands on her hips and a face full of stubbornness, immediately lowered her little head. Her face revealed a sad expression. Han Ziqiang was actually right. Among the three Han sisters, Han Xiaokui's comprehension was indeed the lowest. In the past, when the tablet-seeking forest opened, it was difficult for Han Xiaokui to even comprehend a normal king-level sword technique, let alone the imperial sword tablet. If she had Shin Mubai's help this time, Han Xiaokui could indeed improve greatly. But, are you very disappointed? Yi Guchen, who was standing at the side, looked calm and composed from the beginning to the end. I don't regret it. It's just that I'm afraid I'll be scolded by father again this time. Han Xiaokui frowned and smiled bitterly. It's just sword technique comprehension. I can help you, Yi Guchen said lightly. Han Xiaokui had saved his life, and Yi Guchen wanted to repay her. Big brother Dugu, don't comfort me. Han Xiaokui smiled bitterly. It was not that she did not believe in Yi Guchen. It was just that Yi Guchen really could not be compared to Shin Mubai. This is for you. Yi Guchen flipped his wrist, and there were 5 leaves in his hand. Every leaf was like a carving, and there were mysterious patterns carved on it. As soon as the 5 leaves appeared, the entire room was filled with a strong Taoist rhyme. The fluctuation was many times stronger than the path understanding leaf powder. This is the path understanding leaf. Han Xiaokui casually glanced at it and did not pay much attention. However, when the Taoist rhyme appeared, Han Xiaokui's eyes widened, and her pink little mouth opened into a circle. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.